The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. It's Tuesday. Excited to be here. We're going to be with you for the next 3 hours talking about things having to do with autism and being more effective and efficient working with our children on the autism spectrum. Whether you're a parent, teacher, or practitioner, we know that that's a priority for you. I know that's a priority for you because I am a mom of a son who at 2.5 was diagnosed with autism. He's about to be 9. And I know that my whole life shifted, right? And I needed to change my priorities around and look at things from a new perspective. We always talk about, with autism, the ability to look at other people's perspective because we know that that's something that is a difficulty for kids on the spectrum, but it is something that can be strengthened. I have a story for you later on. I don't want to get all verklempt now, but I'll tell you about what I saw yesterday in my son's classroom, which was really quite amazing to me. I have to say, because I can't not say it at this point in the morning, we just were talking about earlier here in the studio the fact that I don't know what is up with the universe. I really don't, but everybody I know is facing challenges today of a certain ilk. People that I talked to yesterday afternoon, people that I talked to last night, people that I talked to this morning, it seems like everybody's hit a little bit of a bumpy patch in terms of stuff that's not the kind of stuff that you're going to remember 5 years from now. And I always like to put it through that filter about, whatever's going on, and you're having real life stuff going on that's difficult and hard right now, but it's the kind of stuff that 5 years from now when somebody says, what happened in May of 2012, we're not going to remember these things. We all face this on a daily basis. I was talking about this yesterday afternoon about how we make plans of how things we want them to go and how it's going to work. And sometimes just a wrench comes in from the side and goes, I don't think so. Sometimes it's a small wrench, sometimes it's a big wrench. But one of the things that I've learned through this journey with autism, because I'm not a go-with-the-flow person. I'm just not. It's not, I like things to work a certain way. I have my own inflexibility issues. I want to be functioning and moving in a specific direction, and I don't like for things to mess me up. I don't particularly like surprises. I like for it all to be calm, cool, and collected, right? And what I learned through autism is that you make plans and then you change them. And you have to figure out how to go with the flow because our kids have different days, we have different days, and there's no predicting how something is going to go from beginning to end, right? It means we got to be in the moment. And sometimes the moment is uncomfortable, sometimes it's bumpy. But, it's all for a reason, I'm convinced. And please, if you disagree, write in and tell me. But I do think that when we have these days, we have to take a little bit of a breath and go, okay, so what's my priority today? If I can't get everything done that I thought that I was going to get done, if I had a plan, it's not going to be my plan. What can I get done today? That's what I had to do certainly yesterday. It's gotten to the point in my life today where it's funny because so many things went wrong yesterday, so many things, and I got all tootsed about it and found myself getting here, and it literally has gotten to the point where it's funny. It's what else can possibly be messed up here that's not huge and important, because all the things that have gone wrong, they're things that you go, okay, this is really a problem in the moment, but I'm not even going to remember this a week from now. If you're having that day, will you write in and tell us, because we like the affirmation that it's not just us. And I've talked to a bunch of people. I don't think it's just me. me. But I'd like to hear from you guys. If you're having one of those weird wonky days, I don't know, we had this annular eclipse. I don't know whether things have been thrown off, but write in and tell us if you're having a wonky day today. There are lots of different ways that you can participate in all the conversations, whether you want to write in and tell us about your wonky day, or you want to write in and tell us how great your child is doing, or ask a question about something having to do with autism or ABA therapy. We talk a lot about ABA therapy because we know it's the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. And it is effective for autism. Isn't that good news? On days like today, I like to remind myself of what is good. And ABA therapy is good because it gives our children the progress they deserve. All of our kids, by the way, not just some of our kids, but every child that gets the right amount of therapy for them, and it's good quality ABA therapy, we are going to see progress. We're going to see children gain skills that previously they had a difficult time learning, and we're going to see challenging behavior decrease. You notice that I said right amount of therapy for them and good quality therapy over the right amount of time is the other part of it that I didn't say. We have to be able to find our way to that. And sometimes that's the difficult part, is finding the funding, finding the provider. I have been asking you guys for a couple of weeks now, tell me what's holding you back from finding therapy, because I want to help you to sort that out. If it's funding, I want to help you to find the funding source that's right for you. It's just like our kids, it's different for all of us, right? Because if you live in Kansas, it's different than if you live in Washington, D.C. And it's different if you live in Rochester, Minnesota, or Rochester, New York. It's different. But hopefully we can figure it out together. I want to be here on your team. So how can you write to us and tell us what you need? Oh, there's lots of ways. Let's go over them. Now, if you're watching us on autism-live.com, you'll see on your screen it either says live or rebroadcast. If it says live, then that box that's next to the screen that says your questions is active. You can type in whatever you want in there, hit send, and it shows up magically right here on my screen. Isn't technology cool? Don't we live in a great age? Except when it doesn't work. And then, oh, it's fun, right? Not. Okay, so, but right now, everything here is working. So go ahead, hit enter, and you can send your question, your comment. You can just say hi to me. Yesterday we had a message from Jack Riley's dad, the little boy in the A word, saying thank you for all the support and thank you for being so brave. But you can put a message right in here and we will get it in real time, and we really appreciate knowing what's going to help you. So let us know, even if it's just say hi. We love the conversation. All right. If it says rebroadcast, then what you want to do is one of our many other ways of getting in touch with us. One of them is email. You can send off your email to us. We really enjoy reading your email. What we'll do is we'll cover it on the next live show, but also we'll send you a typewritten response. A lot of times what we'll do is farm your question out to an expert, because I am not the expert. I'm just the conduit to the experts. You can also phone us Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. We're here. We'll answer the phone. You can even be patched into the studio if we're live. If we're not live, somebody else will talk to you. And if we're not here, they'll take a message and we'll take the message that'll be on the machine, and we'll get back to you the next time we're in the studio. You can also Skype with us. We have a Skype interview later on today with expert Jen Yakos, who's going to be with us talking about community outings, a really great thing to talk about. But you can Skype in too, and we've had lots of people Skype in, and we'd like to have more. So it's a wonderful thing. We enjoy it. We had Maria Dismonde, the author, with us yesterday via Skype. Lots of different ways to participate. So you can also talk to us on Facebook, and that's a really fun and easy way to do the conversation. When you do that, not only do you talk to us, but you talk to each other. I really love that about Facebook. And you can also tweet with us. That's our newest area that I'm trying to sort out, the tweeting thing. I'm not that good at it, but I'm working on it. I am a work in progress. And if you're not watching us on Autism Live, you could be watching us in lots of other different ways. You could be watching us on Blip TV. We want to thank Blip for being so helpful and so supportive. And you can watch us there. You can also watch us on YouTube. And we are a free download now on iTunes, which is a wonderful thing. And very soon you will be able to download the audio audio-only portion of iTunes. So lots of different ways. And by the way, you can watch us on Ustream as well. Also have to thank Ustream. They were featuring us last week, and we really appreciated that from them. Lots of different ways to watch, and we hope that you are. If there's some way that you would like to see us, if there's some service that you watch things on and you don't see us there, please let us know, because heaven knows we're busy here doing a show. We don't know everything. And we like to hear your suggestions of how this will work for you. We're here for you. Okay. We like to start every morning with something that I fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is the time of day when we try to demystify one word, one phrase, one set of alphabetic letters that are strung together to mean something that we have no idea what it is, right? No matter where you come into this journey, I'm a former teacher. I still was overwhelmed by some of the educational jargon that came with autism, because some of it is just so specific to autism, some of it is specific to psychology, and there's a whole special ed speak that could drive a person crazy, right? And we have enough to drive us crazy. We don't need anything more. But we have to make friends with the jargon. We have to understand these terms in relation to our child so that we can talk to people about our children and understand what's happening. So I like to take one word, one phrase at a time, just like we teach our kids. And I'll admit it, I like to make fun of the definitions and then we give you an actual definition, I make fun of it, and then we give you a somewhat watered down, more user-friendly definition so that we can at least begin to understand what these words mean. So yesterday our term was receptive language, and of course, as promised, today it is expressive language. These are two terms that we're going to hear a lot. There it is. We're going to hear a lot when we are speaking to teachers, but really we're going to hear it whenever we're talking to most people having to do with autism. What's your child's expressive language like? What's their receptive language like? Which one is stronger? Which one is weaker? We talked yesterday, well, let me give you the actual definition of expressive language. Expressive language is the production of language including speech, signing, and or gestures for communication. I can't really make fun of this definition because it's not bad, right? But our actual working definition is the child's ability to communicate their needs. I like to remind everybody that expressive language, though, as we saw in our definition, is not just vocal, right? That it can be gesture, sign. We see in the diagnosis that one of the current and the DSM-4, there's 3 different areas, a lack of social their deficit in terms of social skills, a deficit in terms of language acquisition skills, and we see that it doesn't include, because if the child can sign or point, then then there is a lack of vocal communication. And so to really qualify for the autism diagnosis, you got to show a delay in a certain area of language that it's across the board. So they're not pointing, they're not signing, they're not trying to communicate their needs. And we talked yesterday about the difference between receptive and expressive. I am very visual, so I got to think of it in terms of expressive going that way and receptive coming this way. Receptive, what you hear and understand; expressive, what you have going that direction. But it isn't just the vocal. So somebody could be signing and saying, "I want more." That is expressive language. Somebody could be pointing to the cookie or pointing to you, and that is expressive language. We tend to lump them together, right? Expressive and receptive language. And it's really important when we're looking very closely at a child's development to separate the two and look at them differently so that we can see where the strengths and the weaknesses are. We talked about this a little bit yesterday if you were watching the show. And I don't want to repeat too much, but it's very possible for a child to have a high expressive language ability and have very low receptive. And when that happens, there's a real disconnect. This is the kid in the classroom that you see that they're able to talk to you and they're able to communicate their needs and say what they want to say. But then you say to them, "Hey, can you go over and pick up that stapler?" And it's like the child, you go, "Do they have a hearing disability? And it's literally that the child is not understanding what you're saying. And we can work on that, by the way. We can strengthen that. It could be the complete and total opposite, as it often is with autism, that the expressive language is, not where it needs to be. The child's receptive language, though, may be high, that they're hearing and taking everything in and understanding it, but their ability to communicate it is severely hampered. Sometimes we have kids that both of the things are low. And we need to strengthen both of them. So it could be anywhere, but it's really worthwhile as a parent, it's really worthwhile as a teacher to know where are we in terms of these things and not guess. I've mentioned before, and I'll say it again, I love using the skills program. My son had the benefit of the best ABA therapy. He had the Center for Autism and Related Disorders came to our house because we live in the state of California and we lived within 30 miles of the CARD headquarters. So, am I the luckiest woman on the face of the earth? You betcha. And I always acknowledge that. And I know that a lot of you are out there watching and going, I should only be so lucky, right? For you. And you have to know that I wish that for you too. More than anything else, that's the thing that I wish for you. But if that's not possible in this moment in time, I want you to have as much of that as possible. And I know that after, we were 4 years into a 5-year program with my son, and we, for the first time, got the ability to use skills. And I loved it. I did the CARD learning and I became a better parent, but all of the lessons that are in skills are the lessons and more, really, because we didn't do all the lessons. My son didn't need all of them, but everything that they do at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders with a child in terms of a lesson is in skills. So you can have access to all of it. And I think that's a wonderful thing. And one of the great things about it too is that when you start, you take an assessment for your child and it will tell you exactly where your child is in terms of receptive. And you can see it on a chart and go, oh, look at my child's expressive language and look at my child's receptive language. This is what we need to spend some time on. You're going to keep strengthening the expressive if that's the case, but you're really going to hit the receptive hard. And if it's the opposite or if it's even, you're just going to be in a place of knowledge, and knowledge is a powerful thing. So very exciting. And you can get all that on skills. Yep, you got to answer a bunch of questions, but it means that you're going to know specifically where your child is. I know, I hate the questionnaire things, but knowledge is power. So in any case, expressive language, the stuff that goes from them out, because they're expressing their needs, communicating their needs, receptive, the stuff that comes in and they understand. Both very important. I don't think that one is more important than the other, but it's really important to know where your child is. I said yesterday that I think that I think we can all identify this, that my ability to express myself is much stronger than my ability to hear things. I tend to be one of those people, because I do have a little bit of a hearing loss, that I work a little bit on a tape delay. You say something to me and I got to process it in my head and figure out what you said to me. And so I'm a little bit slower on the uptake for receptive, but clearly I can sit and express myself till the cows come home. And then some. So I have to work on the receptive. And I think it's common that most people have one that's higher than the other. We just don't want it to be a huge difference, right? We want to help our children to achieve the highest potential they can. Alrighty, so there is our jargon for the day. We also always have a question of the day for you. And today's question, it doesn't always have to be about autism, right? But today's question is, what do you get excited about? And I really had this best of times, worst of times moment yesterday. I'm going to wait and save it for you later. But I get excited when my son does new things. When he takes on new things and I see him generalize. We've talked about generalization before on the show. And it's when, you've taught somebody something and you've taught it in very specific ways. And if we have good ABA, then we try to teach things and plan for generalization, so we don't just teach them one way. We teach it in a bunch of different ways, hoping that the child is going to be able to take the knowledge that they've learned and apply it to new situations that you weren't able to teach. And that's exciting. And my son still sometimes will demonstrate generalization, and it's just thrilling to me. Absolutely thrilling. I shared that on Mother's Day for the first time. I've always been asking my son, well, how do you think? And what do you see when you think? And what, I want to understand what you're thinking. And we're going to talk a little bit about thinking today because we actually have a cognition tip later on. But, thinking is this, it's hard to get a hold of, right? It's this amorphous thing. Drawing a picture of thinking, we can draw the little bubble, right? But my son tends to be literal sometimes, and so he's like, "There's no bubbles over people's heads," right? And so how do you teach thinking, and how do you get to the point where you can have a conversation about thinking? Well, that's always been a toughie for my son and I, and because he's a conceptual person and I'm a visual person, and we've had a hard time sometimes talking to each other about thinking or conceptual things, because I want to do a picture of it and I want to understand it through a picture, and he understands it in this big global thing and doesn't understand my pictures. But for the first time on Mother's Day, we found a way to communicate about a specific thing. My husband showed me this picture of, it looked like a man holding a bouquet of kittens. And it literally looked like an armload of flowers. And then you look closer and you see that it was a bunch of baby kittens. And then my husband took the picture away, and I referred to it and said how, it was like 450 cats. And my son said, no, it was 12. And I said, well, no, it was a bunch of cats. And he said, no, it was 12. And he literally had looked at it for maybe 10 seconds. And I said to my husband, give me the phone back, because I want to count to see if it was 12. And sure enough, it was 12. And I was saying, how did you know that? And he said, because I could look at the picture. I said, but the picture wasn't there. He said, no, but I could still, I remembered the picture. I could still see the picture. And I said, oh, and so you could remember it in such detail you could count the cats? And he said, no. What I do is I can move, when I see the picture, I can move it around. And he said, and I lined the cats up. And I got so excited, and he saw how excited I got. And he was like, what? And I said, because you're telling me how you think. And he said, yeah, you can't do that. I can move the cats and I put them in a line so I can count them. I said, no, I can't do that. I can see a blurry picture of the guy holding the cats, but no, I can't see it that clearly. And he said, really? And of course he said, well, maybe you should put your glasses on. And I said, no, because it's not the picture here anymore. It's the picture in your head. And we had a whole discussion about what you see. But that's what gets me excited, is when I see him get things, when I see him generalize, and when I see him be able to communicate to me what's going on in his head. Oh, it's so exciting. So exciting. But honestly, when I see any kid learn, I love to watch people think. I love to watch people think. I used to teach, and I taught in the classroom, and I taught English in the classroom, grades 7 through 12. But before that, because when 9/11 happened, I decided I was going to go in and teach junior high and high school. But before that, I was teaching college, and I taught theater. That's my background. And I love to watch people think on stage, and love to watch people think in a movie. And remember that old game show, Do You Want to Be a Millionaire? And people talked about why were so many people tuning into the show? Why were they watching the show? And I always said, it's because you get to see people think. That they would sit there and they would think through, and sometimes they would speak through what they were thinking. And I just found that fascinating, watching people think and make a decision. And I love to watch kids think and to see kids make the connection. I love to watch ABA videos where you see the child not understanding it, and then the moment when the two little neurons bzzzt, and they get it and the connection is made. It's so exciting to me. That's thrilling to me. But I want to know from you, what's exciting to you? You have the opportunity to write into our Facebook. And it doesn't have to do with autism. It could be you get excited about scrapbooking. It could be that you get excited about quilting. It could be that you get excited about running a marathon. Whatever it is, but I want to know what excites you. We need to, on this journey through autism, hang on to the things that we're passionate about, right? So important, because there are going to be days when it's all swimming around the toilet. I'm sorry, it's a terrible image, but there are days when you're just like, ooh, were in the funnel. My husband likes to call them poop storms. They happen. And on those days, remembering to be grateful and to be passionate about the things we get excited about. Sometimes that's enough to get us through the day for the new day. Reset the pins. Let's start over again on a new day. So write in and tell us what you get excited about. I'll be thrilled to know what you're excited about. All right, we always have a topic of the day as well. Usually it's topic of the week, and our topic this entire week is teaching language, because that's another thing that I get excited about, is when we teach our children communication skills so that they start to be able to tell us what they need and the change that makes in our children. We're going to see Jack Riley a little while later today, and we see that he's beginning to learn that it's much easier to express what you want than to whine. He's still teetering a little bit on the, I am not sure if my needs are going to be met, I'm going to whine. No, wait a second, I'm going to ask you for what I want. And that's a really powerful time in a little boy's life, in a little girl's life, in anybody's life. We have these beautiful children in our lives, and we have so much to give them. And they have so much to give us. And when we teach them language that they can, you guys, this is like 6-7 years in the making for my son to be able to tell me how he thinks. Whew, this is powerful, powerful stuff. Yeah, that was a huge investment. It took a really long time. Guess what? It was worth it. And if somebody could have told me on the first day and on those first 700 difficult days that we for sure were going to get there, I'm positive it would have been easier. There are no guarantees, right? You got to put in the time and see where you can get with your child, but I'm still finding out how exciting that is, how wonderful and exciting that is. So I encourage you to hop on this train and see what your child can do. It really is amazing. All right, so some of the things that we're going to be talking about, of course, we have a myth of the day for you today. We have a healthy eating tip, and we have our guest, Jennifer Yakos, is going to be with us via Skype at 11 o'clock. We're going to be talking with her about community outings. This is something, when we talk about ABA, and applied behavior analysis and how great it is. We also, when we talked about this a little bit yesterday, we talk about DTT, which is discrete trial teaching, and NET, natural environment training. There's also fluency-based training and a bunch of other things, but these things all comprise ABA. ABA is not just DTT. And so important that, we're going to use DTT for sure, because DTT really helps us to acquire a skill really early on. It gives the child plenty of opportunities in a safe environment in which they know they're going to get reinforced to learn something. So a great tool to get us started. Don't you feel sometimes when you're trying to teach your child something and you go, I just don't know how to get it started. If I could get it started, or somebody else could get it started for me, I really think my child could get this, but how do you get it started? DTT, fabulous for getting it started. But then once your child gets it with DTT, you've got to take it into the natural environment. And so we do have to plan for community outings and take our children out into the world. I know there are people who think we should sit at home with our children and be locked in a room by ourselves forever. But you know what? Thank goodness they're not running the show. We are. And it's so important to give our children the opportunity to go out into the community. It's not only important for our child, it's important for us, and it's important for our community. Because the rest of the world needs to understand that it takes all kinds of people. All kinds of people. And our children deserve that opportunity to learn these things. So we're going to talk with Jen Yakos about how we can be successful, set our kids up for success, set us up for success, so that we take them out into the community, and that it's really quality time and not quality frustration time, right? So that's some of what we got going on today. I want to remind you that tomorrow, it's Wednesday, we're going to have Evelyn Gould in at 10 o'clock in the morning talking about how we can be more effective parents. She's a BCBA, a board certified behavior analyst, as is Jen Yakos. And then at 11 o'clock tomorrow, we have Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy Allspod Jackson, my co-host for that hour. Just what a powerful woman. What a powerful, powerful woman she is. She's the executive director of Autism Care and Treatment Today, which we talk about a lot. They give grants to families for the things they need. Really wonderful charity. And joining us tomorrow at 11 o'clock, during the 11 o'clock hour, is Joey Travolta. Yes, if the name sounds familiar, it's because it is. He is John Travolta's brother, but that's not why he's coming. He's coming to talk with us about inclusion films. This is what he does, is that he works with children with special needs and young people in general to help them to gain film skills, to be able to express themselves through films. He's done some amazing stuff. So he's going to be with us tomorrow in the studio to talk about that and to talk about some of the camps that they have coming up over the summer. It's really amazing stuff, you guys. So that's tomorrow, and I want to remind all of you that we're not having a show on Friday, that Emily and I are traveling to the ABA International Conference this weekend, where we're going to interview as many BCBAs as we can. I think we're going to keep a little tally of how many BCBAs. Maybe we'll run like a little contest, Emily, about how many BCBAs can Shannon and Emily possibly interview, and whoever gets closest will win something. But that's what we're doing this weekend. Of course, Monday is a holiday here in the United States, Memorial Day, so there won't be a show then. The only show that we're doing live next week is Tuesday. So we'll be back in the studio on Tuesday, and then we're out for the rest of the week because we're working all weekend. And we have things to do. I have a little boy who's going to turn 9, and I have some celebrating to do. I hope you do too. All right, we're going to take a little break. When we come back, we're going to do a motor tip, so stick with us.
I am grateful for Autism Speaks because they allow families like me to have hope.
They're working towards having these children live better lives.
There's a space for you. Yeah, there's a world for you, and there's a community that is behind you.
And one that has really been able to be the singular voice for people who are involved with and who care about autism.
I do have autism, but I don't let that become a disability for me. Autism Speaks is going to continue to help those who need it, and just look at all the stuff they've done so far and you will be impressed.
3, 2, 1.
And you need to support the walks. We have to raise awareness, but we also have to raise funds to do the work.
I'm grateful for Autism Speaks for one main reason, is they are allowing me to focus on the research.
The work that Autism Speaks has been doing is critical for keeping autism research on the radar screen.
We proclaimed 2 April as the World Autism Awareness Day. I'm very proud of the UN and thankful Autism Speaks.
Getting the health mandate bill passed in New Jersey particularly, we needed to be able to make an argument, not just do this because it's the right thing to do, but do it because it's cost effective.
When everyone else told me nothing was wrong with my son, I got information from a website that told me something wasn't right.
I am so proud of Autism Speaks for creating these beautiful ad campaigns, which have reached people who are not affected by autism and have also created a greater climate of compassion and understanding.
It's been really great for Bachman to have gotten involved with Autism Speaks early on. I think everybody here feels like they really make a difference.
To make sure that we generate as much money as we can for Autism Speaks so we can all solve this puzzle together.
There's no way we could have come this far without our families, without our supporters to date, but there's so much farther we have to go. And everybody's invited to join this cause. We need all the help we can get to make the difference we know we can make.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and we're going to talk about a motor skills tip right now, in particular visual motor. I've shared before on the show that my son was diagnosed with autism at 2.5, and we all know, if we've got a child on the spectrum, that sometimes you take them to doctors after you've gotten the diagnosis, and if you disclose that they have the diagnosis, there's some doctors that don't quite know what to do with that, right? And I certainly, because people tend to look for what's the most common reason for something. You go to a doctor and you say, "Doctor, I'm sniffling in the morning, and you know, I don't know what's happening, but here's the symptom. I'm sniffling in the morning." And the doctor, they're immediately going to go. There's even a name for it. Is that Occam's razor? That they go for what the most common thing could possibly be, the most easily explainable thing. So they go, "Oh, you know, if you're sniffling in the morning, it's probably allergies then, right?" The problem is a lot of times we'll go in and we'll say, you know, my child has autism, and the doctor goes, "Oh, well, it's probably autism related." And you know what? That's a sticky wicket, because it isn't always. And we have to be really careful as parents and teachers not to explain away everything according to autism. If you look at what the diagnosis for autism is, for instance, challenging behavior, not on the diagnosis, right? It tends to go hand in hand because the child's having a difficulty communicating their needs, but it does not mean that if your child has autism that you're going to have them engage in challenging behaviors. It doesn't mean that. And with my son in particular, I think I was guilty of it this time, that there were things that my son was having real difficulty being able to do. And it was a little bit of a conundrum of why, you know, he flies through this program and acquires this skill, but this one we're just struggling with. And why is that? And it wasn't until I heard somebody, actually Dr. Adele Nadowski, talking about the visual motor curriculum in skills that I started to ask a certain number of questions. Because in the motor skills curriculum, there are 4 separate domains, right? There's gross motor, large muscle movements, fine motor, which are hand and finger skills. There is the oral motor, which is all the muscles that it takes for you to be able to make vocal speech and have it be understood. And then, of course, there's the visual motor. Well, that held no interest for me, because I was like, what has that got to do with me whatsoever? And within visual motor, by the way, there are 3 different areas. There's visual perception, there's actual visual motor, ability to move, and then there's binocular motor skills. And each one of them deals with separate things. That for binocular motor skills, it's the child's ability to, you know, we have 2 eyes that are looking 2 ways, and we have to focus them in such a way so that we only see one of something. If you've ever held up a pair of binoculars and you know, focus, there's at some point you see 2 things and then they go together and you see one thing. Then for visual perception, it's our ability to look at something and fill in what isn't there. Our brain has the ability to look at part of a picture, and even though, you know, maybe someone's face is obscured this much of it, our brain fills in that there's a full face there, and we don't assume that there's just half of a face there. And then our ability to motor our eyes back and forth and do things. Well, we were talking about what some of the symptoms were, why someone would need to see a specialist to diagnose if in fact their child was having visual motor difficulties. And they were going through a list of things saying, you know, for instance, if a child's very clumsy, it's worth it to get their vision checked for these very specific things. If the child is having trouble reading, very important to get your child checked for these kinds of things. If your child is having difficulty with handwriting and you've identified that it is not the fine motor skill, then you need to get your child checked. If your child is having difficulty with things like riding a bike, and it's not a motor issue, then it may be visual. And we started to put together this picture of a child in my head, and I went, wait a second, this sounds familiar to me. These are all the lessons that my son has demonstrated a capability of, but he isn't putting it all together. It's not working out. Why is this? I said, I got to get my child checked. And sure enough, we took him to a specialist, and we had to wait a little bit to get the appointment, but sure enough, he was having a visual motor difficulty, to the point where I stayed in the room when I watched the test. Fascinating tests, first of all. And their preference was not that I stayed in the room to watch. I got to tell you, I'm king and queen, both of them, of saying, no, I'm sorry, I just don't leave my child in a room with people that I have not known forever and ever. And even then, I don't leave them in a room with people I don't, that I do know. I'm that kind of a protective mom. So I was like, sorry, I'm staying. And if it becomes non-productive, we'll see. But, I'm staying in the room. And I'm fascinated too. I'm a deeply curious person. But there was one test that they were doing with a gold ball and a silver ball. My son was sitting in the chair, and they were taking and saying, okay, I'm going to move the silver ball, and I'm going to go like this. And my son was trying to track it with his eyes. Well, it's sort of like a dentist chair, he was pushing against the arm of the chair and trying to find the way to keep his eyes still. And I could see that it wasn't working. But he was using his whole body to try to track that thing, and he couldn't do it. It was horrifying to me. Now, we did watch, I watched while he did some of the other tests too, for the binocular vision and the visual perception, which he was off the charts great, which was part of the reason why we hadn't identified a problem before, because his other skills were compensating for his lack of skill in a different area. But I have to tell you that really important that if you see that your child is having difficulties, that you find the right specialist for the right thing, right? So if your child is being here's the difficulty. Our children have trouble communicating generally anyway, right? But even children who don't have difficulty communicating don't tell us that they're having visual problems. You know why? Because they don't know that's what it is. They don't understand. They might be seeing two of something and have seen two of something their entire life, but they think that you're seeing two of something also. They don't know any different, so why would they go, oh, by the way, I'm seeing two of those lions? They don't understand what it is supposed to be, or that it's supposed to be clearer. If their vision is blurry, they don't have anything to relate it to. It is what it is, so they assume that's what it's supposed to be. So we have to be detectives for our kids to be able to look at these things and know when they need to go, and I didn't know. And can I just tell you, I beat myself up about it for a really long time. And because the doctor said, man, I can't believe he reads as well as he does with this in mind, because he gets to the end of the line and he gets over into this area of his vision, and the eye muscles are not as strong as they need to be to support good reading. Well, the good news is that there were lots of exercises that we could do. So we got this diagnosis. He got glasses that had nothing to do with the motor problem, but he was having some blurred vision in distance, not in close-up reading. Thank goodness, because if we had paired blurry with not being able to keep the eye steady, I don't know where we would have been in terms of reading. But because he reads substantially above grade level. Even with the vision problem. So, thank heavens for that, because otherwise I really would have been beating myself up. But we were encouraged to buy a certain machine that helps to strengthen the motor, the visual motor. And we also, I have to be honest with you, have used some of the visual motor lessons and skills, which are not meant to take the place of what the doctor gives you, but are meant to support that. And we just last week took him back to the doctor to be reevaluated, and he said the words I wanted to hear, which was, there's been tremendous progress. Tremendous progress. We're not done, right? But tremendous progress. And I watched as he did the ball thing again, and he still, it was difficult for him, but he could do it. And he didn't have to be, squinting and moving his body. He could do it. So that was a fabulous thing. I hope that if you are hearing some of those symptoms, that you will consider taking your daughter or son to a visual specialist and ask them, do you have experience with identifying visual motor issues in children with autism? Make sure that you're working with somebody who does. I had to ask around and get a referral because it wasn't just something I could look up online and see, oh, this is the doctor to take. Make sure that you're taking them to the person that you need to go to diagnose these things, and somebody who, I have to be honest, I mean, Jem was doing really well at the point that we took him, and I said to the doctor, I can't even imagine, I'm really upset with myself that we didn't get him in 3 years earlier to be working on this stuff, but I can't imagine that he could have done the test. And the doctor said, you'd be amazed that we have ways of reinforcing, he totally gets the lingo. It says we have ways of reinforcing and taking breaks so that we can do the testing that we need to do to identify these problems. So don't put it off, because it does make, I see clearly that's why we haven't been able to do the bicycle riding without the training wheels yet. But we're hitting it hard this summer. So I hope to report back to you that we have that under control. But there have been lots of other things that he's been doing much better. His handwriting in terms of block letters, still not the neatest, but it's significantly better this year. And his cursive writing, because we had started this training, is beautiful. Beautiful cursive writing that he does. So that's a wonderful thing. Visual, motor, whether it's binocular, perception, or just the being able to move the eye in the way and have it stop where it needs to and track where it needs to, really important to our children's development. It is not a part of the diagnosis. And so if you see that your child is having visual problems and they say, oh, well, that's just stimming, that's just autism, not necessarily. Don't take that for an answer. Go to who you need to. Let's take a break, and when we come back, it's time for the healthy eating tip of the week. Stick with us.
Mostly the behavior started at night, but it was invading the day, where he would just speak one syllable and babble and pace around.
When she was a year old, she lost speech. She did never seem to request me for anything, even for food. He told me over the phone that I should just put her in an institution. I was devastated. I was an institution, a hospital. Yeah, isn't that nice?
He told me that it was possible or likely that Ruffin would never be employed, that he would never work productively, that he would not know that I loved him, nor would he love me, nor would he be likely to marry.
There's a 50% chance that he won't be able to talk at all, but if he does talk, he will only be able to, make simple desire requests, I want, things like that. And probably by the time he was 10, he'd be in a home.
Doreen told me that he would recover, and Doreen told me that he would go to regular kindergarten.
I really have a very normal kid now, and lots of normal worries, but not extraordinary ones.
My name is Deli Popola, and I'm one of the creators of theoutspot.com. Theoutspot.com is an online support system for families and specialists who are affected by autism across the whole world. Share inspirational stories, find resources in their area. Hope you can join.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. It's Tuesday. It's time for the healthy tip of the week. Healthy eating tip of the week. And I know last week I was really unpopular with all of you because I said you gotta really look at the sugar issue. It's not true for all kids, but for some of our kids, sugar gets to be a problem where they just want it all the time. So today goes a little bit hand in hand with that, and I don't want to be so boxy. I think you have to look at your individual child, but what I want to talk about today are artificial food colors, right? and processed foods in general. Okay, let's be honest about this. There are plenty of kids that are out there that can seemingly handle processed foods and seemingly handle artificial food coloring. I'm not saying we have to all be militant hippies and, live off the land. I'm not suggesting that, so don't panic. But I am suggesting that always, isn't it common sense that we want to give our children as healthy a diet as possible? Because we're always talking about how do we set them up for success. And I don't know about you, but I have been to birthday parties before where everybody oohs and ahs over the cake, and the cake is so lovely. And now cakes are extreme, right? They're 17 tiers. They have every color in the rainbow on the outside, and sometimes you cut into the cake and it's every color of the rainbow inside as well. And they're gorgeous. They're absolutely gorgeous, and it's so much fun, and the kids love it, and it's so exciting. My son likes to walk by and admire the cake and take pictures of it with the camera, but he doesn't get to eat any of it. There's too many things that his body can't handle. That may be true of your child. It may not be true of your child. But my point is that I go to the birthday party and I see, and everybody tells me, oh, thank goodness, my child can handle that. I don't have a problem with that. And there's kids that are at the party that are on the spectrum, and there's a whole bunch of kids who aren't on the spectrum at these parties. And the moms all sit there and assure to me, oh, I'm so glad that my child doesn't have sensitivities to any of these things. And the party's clipping along and everything's been fine, and people are playing in the bouncy house. They're doing whatever the activity at the birthday party is. And then we cut the cake. And mayhem ensues. Now, it might just be, I'm not saying if P then Q, right? Because what do I know? But, and it might just be that it's sensory overload for the children at that point. It might be that there's a lot of sugar, so they got a lot more energy. But I see children everywhere having meltdowns. And suddenly the child who's not aggressive is bonking somebody else in the head. It's frightening to me. And I have to be honest that we only in the last couple of years have stuck around for this part of it, because usually I had like a time limit and I would go, oh, they cut the cake, we're out of here. Because my son had enough, and now, he's totally fine. He can deal with all the sensory of it. It's actually me that can't handle it now, because it goes sensory crazy. You can hear it pitch up at the party. And again, I don't know, sugar, artificial color, but I'm seeing children who have green, blue, red, black tongues. And it's just a little bit like frightening to me. And a point was made to me many years ago about artificial colors, and you can have arguments about it, and there are plenty of articles that are out there that say, this is how they treat it in the United States, and this is how they treat it in Europe, and it's vastly different. That we're the only country that I'm aware of that doesn't have some of the restrictions that other countries have in terms of health and artificial colors. But I'm sure that a little bit of anything is manageable for most people, right? Let's use common sense about this. But the point that was made to me was when many, many years ago, when kids were having breakfast, what did they have? And what did they eat for breakfast, and then what did they have for lunch, and what did they have for a snack, and what did they have for dinner, and what did they have afterwards? We take a look at that and go, okay. And then we take a look at what children have now. And I just want you to stop and consider the amount of everything that you put into your child. I've already said to you, consider the amount of sugar. We've talked about, consider about the amount of the pesticide load that you put in your child. Consider like the fresh fruits and vegetables that you put in. Now I'm asking you to consider what do you put in terms of artificial flavors, artificial colors, and processed foods. Because if we're trying to be as healthy as possible, is that the choice that you want to make? Again, I am not saying cut it out altogether. And I'm not saying, because I am not a nutritionist, I'm not saying that it necessarily is bad for your child. But if you as a parent look at it across a day or a couple of days and say, okay, this is an acceptable amount to me, and I see my child handling this well, then you're good. You're golden. But if you can look at it and keep a food diary for your child and look back and go, oh my gosh, I didn't realize how much of something my child was having, whether it was this, that, or the other thing. And reading the ingredients and knowing what it is that you're putting into their little bodies. And if you look at it and go, yep, I know exactly what I'm putting in, and I've kept track of it for a couple of days, and looking back on it, I see that I'm okay, fine. But if you look back and go, wow, okay, I didn't realize that, you know, the waffle that I'm giving them in the morning has artificial food coloring in it. And the yogurt that I'm giving them at lunch has artificial food coloring in it. And the fruit roll-up that I'm giving for the snack in the afternoon has artificial food coloring in it. And then, you know, the thing that I'm serving, you know, the whatever, the ranch dip that I'm serving with their vegetables for dinner, my goodness, has artificial food coloring in it. And then the snack that they're having has artificial food coloring in it. That's a lot of artificial food coloring. So I'm just saying, take a common sense approach to it, take a look at it, and know what you're doing. I think that's the place to start with everything. Keep a food diary for a couple of days, and at the same time that you're keeping a behavioral diary, and see, does it make a difference? If you can give your child a pound of sugar a day and you're not seeing a behavioral difference, and you're not seeing a difference in their weight and their health, then you have a very lucky child, right? And that's okay. But if you do see a difference, it's something you might want to look at and go, what's a healthier choice that I can do? If instead of giving them this snack in the afternoon that has the artificial food coloring, that has the sugar in it, that I'm then seeing a behavior afterwards, what if I were to give an organic apple then? Like, how, you know, and you can really look at it very pragmatically and go, here's the organic apple, which is expensive, right? But is it as expensive as this treat that I was giving that had the artificial food coloring and the sugar that I'm getting the behavior afterwards? And I know it's kind of bumpy when our kids are used to things and you say, you know, here's the apple, and they're used to having the fruit roll-up. But I think you'll be amazed if the fruit roll-ups, if you just go, oh, the store didn't have them, we don't have them, you're going to get upset behavior for a couple of days, but eventually if your child is hungry, they're going to eat the apple. You know, my son is very good. My son, the joke around our house is if your child won't try different foods, that the thing to do is to restrict their diet because of allergies and all kinds of things, and it makes food a fascinating thing, and then suddenly they want to try new things. It's a joke. It's not necessarily true. But the person that I always have a hard time with is my husband. And when my husband and I started dating, he had not had an apple in probably 5 years. I know, it's appalling, right? And it was not something he would have chosen to eat. It just didn't even occur to him. He had not had a glass of milk in at least 5 years. And we went on a road trip and I packed sliced apples, and he was like, oh, really? You don't have any potato chips? You don't have any? And I said, no, I'm sorry, I just didn't pack it. And he ate that apple, and you would have thought that we had been on a game show and he won $1 million, because he was like, this is really good. And I said, yes, it is, isn't it? Isn't that amazing? That sometimes, even I will pick things that I shouldn't have, and yet if somebody gives us the healthy choice, we go, wow, this is really fabulous. I know that's expecting a lot of our children that are on the spectrum who have inflexibility issues. But if we go slowly, I'm not saying cut it all out at the same time, a little bit at a time, and, maybe it's the snack, that's the one meal a day that you say, I'm going to be inflexible about for a week because I'm going to let them have their things during the meals, but the snack, I'm just going to say, it's got to be healthy. And you will see that they will come around. It is kind of amazing. But we're not trying to make it a punishment, right? Just making it available, and if they flip out about it, we're not giving it attention, but this is what we have for snack. If you don't want it, you don't have to have it, but then you got to wait for dinner. It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. All right, there's our healthy eating tip for the day. Try not to hate me. But we do want to feed our children really healthily. It is time for the A word. This is one of my favorite things on the planet right now. I love this. It's an ongoing documentary being made here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And they're following a little boy, Jack Riley, who was diagnosed at the age of 2 with autism. And I think he's just turned 3 or is about to turn 3 in this week's video. We see that he's got a new baby sister on the way, and that this little boy has been working really hard to expand on his potential. He is starting to speak in full sentences. He has come quite a way. He still has some issues with food, that he finds things like bananas aversive. Don't quite know why. You'll hear the dad in this video saying, I can't wait until he can tell me what it is about a banana that is so upsetting to him. It's a day to look forward to. And I'm confident that someday his dad is going to be able to say, I don't know, it was just, and I don't know, it was this, that, the other thing, no big deal anymore. So let's take a look at what's going on with Jack Riley this week, and we'll talk about it afterwards. This is the A word.
A, B, C, D, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X,
Talking a lot this morning.
down, I, down, my, B, C, next time.
Won't you?
No, say, with me.
That's right, kiddo. Very good. Okay, Jack Riley, one more minute. Say okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Do you want to play something else for now? What do you want to play?
Hey, pancake.
You want to play pancakes? Oh, is this the sign for pancakes? What do you want to work for, Jack Riley? Do you want to work for puzzle, for trains, for jumping on the bed? What do you want to work for? More jumping? Okay.
Pancake. Pancake.
Okay. Sit down. Sit down here, though.
Pancake.
You want pancakes? Can you say that better? Say, I want pancakes.
I want pancake.
Should we go see where the pancakes are then?
Okay.
All right. Let's go find Dad. Come on. Come with me. Walk with me. And we'll go find Dad, okay? All right. Can you open the door? Turn. There you go. Nice. Let's go see where those pancakes are. Say, I'm hungry. Ask you quick questions, okay? All right. Okay, look. Okay. What's your name? What's your name? Nice job. How old are you? Good job. Sit down, though. Okay. Where do you live?
Jessica teaches Jack Riley other social ID questions such as where do you live and what's your last name.
There you go. Nice job. Here you go. Slow down. There you go. Hi. Aww.
You look cute. I love you.
Group kiss. Group kiss. Ready? 1, 2. Oh, nice hands.
Nice hands. Nice hands. Nice hands. That's not-
Nice hands.
Nice hands get you more attention than bad hands.
Big brother. Who's big brother?
Who's a big brother? Yes.
Where's the little sister?
Where's the little sister?
Where? Is she here? Is that
Right
little sister?
there. She's
There
right.
she
That's
is.
right.
Can she have a kiss? Can little sister have a kiss? Thank you.
I hope. I hope.
Jack Riley is needing less prompting to appropriately gain attention. Jessica only gestures to get him to ask. They introduced the skill about 7 weeks ago, and it's becoming less contrived and is occurring naturally in situations. Here's a look from 7 weeks ago, when Jessica first introduced gaining attention. In the beginning, she tempts Jack Riley with an item he wants, then prompts him the whole way, gesturing and physically showing him what to do and what to say.
Jessica. I want pancakes. Hey, look at me when you say it. Say, I want pancakes.
As time goes by and the skill becomes more natural, the prompting will completely fade away.
Ready? Okay, show them how you can use a straw. You gotta go all the way. Show me. There you go. Good job.
Feeding used to be very time-consuming and difficult for Cheryl and Mike. Jack Riley would swat away food fed to him and would refuse to self-feed. He now feeds himself and even uses a fork. His diet, though, is still limited, but it's growing. Drinking has also been an issue for Jack Riley. He's typically only drank out of baby bottles or bottles with a hard nipple top. They've tried getting Jack Riley to drink from a cup, but every time they would present it, he would try to lap it up like a cat, anticipating all the fluid to come rushing at him. Now they have introduced drinking from a straw, so he has an item to drink from that is age appropriate.
I'm gonna suck it up. You want to do that again?
Yeah.
Want to do that again?
One more time, and then you can play.
Okay.
Yay! Very good, Jack.
There you go.
You guys got that exact same pitch level there. I don't know how you duplicate.
Do you want the purple iPhone? Okay.
Okay, what's the matter?
You can have applesauce.
Hey.
You can have it. You can have it. Come here. Can you show me? Bite for mommy.
Your turn. Do you know? Jack Riley, say, I don't want banana. Okay. What do you want then? What do you want then? I want.
Okay. Can we have a spoon, Daddy?
One of the food items Jack Riley eats a lot of are bananas. For some reason, though, seeing a banana really upsets Jack Riley. He enjoys eating it, but hates the sight of it. One of the issues is that biting solid food is very aversive to him.
Fear of the banana. Someday we'll tell him he eats one every day.
More awareness than it was in the yogurt, so we have to go in baby steps with it. That's fine with me.
This is history. I might drink the whole thing.
With like no prompting, no.
Yeah,
you're right.
Okay, kiddos. See ya. Have a good weekend.
Say thanks, Miss Jessica.
You say bye. Can you say bye, Jessica?
Look at her. Where is Jessica? There she is.
Thank you. Oh, thanks.
Just in case you were wondering.
You're Jessica. You are.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Have a great weekend,
See ya.
Jessica.
Okay, welcome back. That was the A word, and I want to remind everybody that you can go back and watch earlier episodes of this. They have their own channel on YouTube. There it is. You can go back and watch early episodes, catch up, and even go further, because there are many more videos than where we are. We go pretty slow with this because I like to do one episode a week and really look at it and talk about the myriads of different things that happen within the video. Yesterday we talked a little bit about that independent play that you saw at the beginning of it and how important that is and why it's so important. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about two different things. The gaining attention. We saw in the beginning, on the first day, I mentioned earlier that if we're going to start teaching something, we usually start teaching, not always, but a lot of times we'll start teaching something using DTT, discrete trial teaching. And there's a very specific reason for that. If we want to get at something, we want to provide ample opportunities for the child, and we want to do it in a very structured way so that we can control different things that happen in the environment. So we set up a circumstance where we're going to put a demand on the child does the behavior we want, and then we can immediately reinforce the behavior because we want the child to get it. And in the beginning, they're not going to understand why they're doing the behavior, but they're going to begin to understand, but when I do this, I get reinforced. I get my pancake, or I get my video game, or I get whatever the thing is that we've determined is the desirable thing in the moment. That's the reinforcement. So, but it's so hard in the beginning. And one of the things that we start with is compliance. Once we get compliance, then we start adding other programs. But we are going to meet with frustration again and again and again anytime we start to teach a new skill, because the child has an expectation of another skill, and sometimes they override, or it seems like, well, last week the thing you wanted me to do was this, and now this week it seems like that's not working. Well, that's kind of life, right? So if you notice in the previous episodes, they were doing things where Jessica would do something and she would say, do this. And so Jack Riley would have to mimic exactly what it was Jessica was doing. So here he's said he wants something. I think he says he wants help. And Jessica is giving him the gesture prompt for, I want you to appropriately get my attention, which with this family, this is not the way everybody's going to teach getting attention. But they had asked the parents, here are some choices. What would you like at this point for this child? And they agreed that they would like to be tapped on the shoulder and, for him to say their name to gain their attention, because that's an appropriate way for a 3-year-old to get attention instead of kicking or screaming or throwing something. Eventually, when he's older, he's going to be taught to say, excuse me, or some other way of gaining attention that's appropriate for a little bit older. But for an almost 3-year-old, tapping on the shoulder and saying the person's name is a really appropriate way. It's not the only one. In any case, at this point, he's saying, want something, and she's not acknowledging it, but she's pointing to her shoulder. So he is reminded with the gesture prompt that he needs to come over and tap her on the shoulder and say, Jessica. But what I love is that they rewind and show you the beginning of the first time that they were trying to show him to gain attention. And you watch that video, and he's asking her for something, and she says, come here and tap me on the shoulder, and he's sitting close enough, and instead of coming there and tapping her, he's doing this to himself, because he's still thinking, oh, well, before, if you do something, I would do this, and I got whatever the reinforcement was. So then she has to do a full physical prompt where she takes his hand and shows him. And he's frustrated because the week before, if she said, do this, then he would do it to himself and he would get reinforcement. So he's, and she has to ignore that frustration and that noise and takes his hand and shows him, and then he gets reinforcement. When we first start to teach something, they're confused sometimes because they go, well, the rules used to be this. It's okay for them to be frustrated. I know sometimes it's hard. We hate to see our children frustrated, but it's okay to let them be frustrated because it doesn't last for very long if we're teaching properly. We don't want to leave them in the frustration. We want to get to the reinforcement as fast as possible because that's where the learning happens. And they go, oh, rule change. And I know it seems like a lot to expect of a 2-year-old with autism, but the truth is that they get it. And the reason why they get it is because they want to figure out what the rules are to get the reinforcement. That's why it's so important that we get the reinforcement right. Okay, let's talk about the straw, teaching him how to deal with the straw, because that continues this reinforcement. So did you see the many different steps that were there? That the mom took the straw and she dipped it in his most preferred food that's going to work with a straw, which is applesauce. So she took the applesauce in the beginning and she stuck the straw so that there was quite a bit of applesauce on the end of the straw, but some inside the straw. So she stuck the straw in the child's mouth. The child likes the applesauce, so they clean the end of the straw, and she says, get it all, there's more, there's more. It's got to be a really preferred food, right? So he does. He sucks. For the first time, he sucks the applesauce out of the end of the straw. There's just a very little bit, and it's very smooth applesauce, so he sucks it out, and what do? They go, yay, that's wonderful, right? And they continue to do that, and each time she puts a little less on the outside, so in order to get the treat, now what we're teaching here is for him to suck it out of the straw, and the praise that we're giving is the reinforcer. Okay, now we're ready to move after a certain, and they don't show us how long that is, but we're ready to move to the actual lesson. So that's like a building block lesson, right? Sometimes we have to teach the precursor because he's got to understand that you want to suck something out of the straw. He's not sucking to the bottom of the straw, but we're giving him the beginning motion, right? And he's getting it. Yay, fabulous. Now we're ready to move to the actual fundamental skill, which is him actually sucking liquid up from the bottom of the straw. So what do? The mom still takes and puts the applesauce on the end of the straw, so that it's in the tube, but not as much, right? And she sticks the straw right in the cup, and everything is right there for her to do, and she sticks it in his mouth. Now and we haven't waited an hour, by the way. This is happening, fairly much in real time. We just didn't see how many times they did the trials of sucking it out with just the applesauce, but she sticks it in the drink, and he is used to now, because he's done it 4 or 5 times, of sucking the applesauce out. Well, he sucks the applesauce out, and in the course of doing that, he gets a bit of liquid that comes up. Okay, so let's talk about what some of the different things are that are going on here. They've set this child up for success by not just expecting that the drink was reinforcing enough to start with. Eventually, getting a drink is going to be reinforcing enough, but right now, it's not. There are other ways for him to get a drink, that were working for him, which were the baby bottles, and we might see a child who starts to fuss, but we've done an end run around that, right? Done the applesauce so that it's really exciting, tasty to him. He loves the applesauce. So the applesauce in the actual lesson becomes this, it's sort of an antecedent modification. It's a little bit of an establishing operation. It's much more likely because anytime we see something that's makes it more likely to do the behavior, then it's helping us set up for success. Well, that applesauce is making it more likely for us to see the behavior. So he's sucking the straw, he gets the applesauce first, and then he gets the liquid. As soon as he gets the liquid to the top, what do mom and dad and the therapist do? They all praise, yay, yay, which is not yet the reinforcer, right? He likes it when they all praise him, but it's not his be-all, end-all at this point. What he was working for, because if he drinks, and we don't see how many times he had to drink, but it looked like 3 times that we at least saw, then he gets to play with the purple iPhone that he wanted to play with. So that's his real reinforcement. But the praise is the thing that we paired with the reinforcement, because eventually this is not a child who's going to go off to 3rd grade and have to have an iPhone every time he takes a drink out of a straw, right? Nor is it even going to be a child that every time he drinks out of the straw is he going to get a yay. But eventually, over time, they're going to fade out first the iPhone, and then they're going to fade out the praise. And what's going to become reinforcing is taking a drink out of the cup. Well, you can see that this starts to happen fairly quickly. By the time in one session, which probably was a half an hour long, that portion of the session, we went from having to stick applesauce on the straw to teach him how to suck, to being able to put applesauce on the straw so that he drank from the cup and he got the iPhone, to him just being able to drink from the cup while he's playing with the iPhone. So very likely by the next day, they're going to remove the iPhone and just praise. And by the day after that, you're going to have a child who's just drinking with a straw and finding it exciting because straws are fun. And you also notice too that they had a fun straw. Sometimes it's great to get the bendy straws or a straw that, has all the little loop-de-loops. This one had stripes on it and you could see in it so that he could see the liquid coming up. But whatever you do, you're making it fun. You're making it reinforcing. And this is how we can see a difference, that this little boy who didn't have an age-appropriate way to drink now can drink from a straw. Yes, eventually they're going to work on being able to drink from the cup without a straw, but at least this is an age-appropriate thing. He's not going to have to walk around with a sippy cup or a bottle. He is going to be able to drink with a straw. It's baby steps. I know it's really hard because you go, well, I want to get to this point. But you can see that if you follow the steps, it's so funny because this is something that we go over and over with my son right now because he's frustrated in school that the math is too easy for him, quite frankly, that, they're learning how to do things by a set of steps and he doesn't want to do that. He's like, I can figure it out in my head, but he has to do the steps. So we've made it reinforcing for him that anytime they're doing something and he does the steps, he gets to wear home a sticker that says, I did the steps. And for every sticker that he gets that say, I did the steps, he gets $1. And, he doesn't like to do it, but he likes the $1. So he's like, oh, I'll do the steps for you. I don't need to do the steps, but I'll do them for you. Well, same thing for us. We have to do the steps and we have to do whatever it is that we have to do to make it reinforcing for us so that we will do the steps. I love to skip ahead, right? I'm like, how quick can we do this? But that isn't advantageous when we're working with kids on the spectrum and we're trying to teach them a new skill. Think about the things that you do in your life that are very exacting. And imagine trying to teach that to somebody and just skipping to the end result. You wouldn't want to, right? You'd want to teach them the steps that they need to do. Well, we're going to have to do that with things like straws, but you see that if you actually do it by the steps, how quickly that can go. And it's very exciting. He'll have that skill for the rest of his life. How cool is that? This is why I love the A word, because we get to see these very real things. We could talk about learning how to drink from a straw forever, but then when you see it, it's an entirely different thing. All right, we got to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to look at some of your viewer response. If you haven't already written in on Facebook or tweeted, now's a great time to do it. Our question of the day was, what do you get excited about? So please let us know. We're going to look at that when we come back. Stick with us.
Skills is a revolutionary web-based program that incorporates comprehensive assessment, curriculum design, progress tracking, and treatment evaluation for children with autism all in one place. Developed by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. Our approach is based on over 40 years of research on the principles of learning and their application to improving the lives of children with autism. How does Skills work? Created with speed and simplicity in mind, Skills was modeled on an easy 3-step process. Step 1. Start assessment. Step 1 begins with our intelligent assessment system, which consists of a series of questions. This assessment is essential to identifying your child's level of skills compared to their typical peers across all areas of development. This includes assessing social, motor, language, adaptive, play, cognition, executive functions, and academic skills. Every skill has an assigned age which indicates when the skill emerges during typical development. This means that each child is automatically presented only with lessons that are relevant to his or her age. Step 2. Choosing activities. It's now easier than ever to build an individualized treatment plan. In Step 2, you are presented with an individualized pool of activities that are directly linked to your student's assessment results. Each activity represents a specific skill that has been indicated by the assessment as needing to be taught. Activities are categorized by curriculum and then by lesson. There are 3 main types of skills: building blocks, fundamental, and expansion skills. Fundamental skills are necessary for successful everyday functioning. Building blocks are prerequisites to a fundamental skill. Expansion skills are non-essential skills, but may provide further enrichment in certain areas. After reviewing the activities available to you, you can quickly add your chosen activities to the treatment plan by simply checking the box and clicking the button. Step 3. Start treatment. Once you have selected and added the activities you want, you are ready to begin teaching. Skills provides you with all the tools necessary to design and manage an effective curriculum plan, such as printable activity guides that are customizable by the teacher, supplemental teaching aids including printable data sheets, teaching guides, visual aids, worksheets, and tracking forms, detailed IEP goals and benchmarks for each activity, brief and visually appealing video tutorials, a variety of treatment progress and clinical timeline charts, and lots more. And since Skills is completely web-based, everything you need is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in one easy-to-access location. Skills users even benefit from unlimited access to a support community, where they can ask questions and share ideas with a skills expert. Skills is always with you.
Welcome back to Autism Live, and it's time to answer our questions of the day, but I have some cleanup to do because a couple of days ago we posted, where would you like to go if you could go anywhere? And some of you on Twitter had answered, and I didn't get around to Twitter that day. So somebody wrote Disney World for sure. Another person said Galapagos Islands to see the turtles. Love how you think. That'd be awesome. We just were at the Arcadia Arboretum the other day, and man, did they have some serious turtles there. I can only imagine what they're like in Galapagos Island. Another person said Cambodia, or I don't even know, Langkawi. That's been on the list for a while now. Okay, I don't even know that place, so it has not been on my list. That's fascinating to me. Another person who says, I'd take them all around Europe. Okay, that is a brave woman. And somebody else who says somewhere sunny. Maui is another person. Egypt, where it all began. Awesome. You guys are exotic on Twitter. I'm telling you. Okay, so that's, and there's more there, but they're further down. Okay, so that's some of the different things there. Also wanted to show you, need to be able to go back to my other page here, that today our question of the day was, what do you get excited about? So somebody wrote in and said, hearing both of my special children say how smart they are. That's awesome. Another person, I love this, said, naps, with 2 exclamation points. Another person who says, my daughter's spelling simple words and reading to me. She has been delayed due to the school not recognizing her autism for years, but I am so proud of her. Very awesome. Another person who says, my son's starting his new private placement in July. And another person who says, every time my daughter says a new word. Awesome. Somebody else who says, my boy opening his Prezzies. He's 8 today. Oh, Prezzies. I was thinking pretzels. Prezzies. He's 8 years old today. Happy birthday. Hey, you know, if you're ever having a child have their birthday and you want me to say happy birthday to them on the air, all you got to do is write in and I will. So happy birthday to this 8-year-old. But if you want me, I'll say first names. I won't say full names because we don't want to disclose. But anybody who wants to write in, and I will make a big deal and say happy birthday to them. So happy to do that. And you know, the show, you can always find it on Blip and find it exactly if you're not watching live. So another person who says, our son's saying a new word. He's saying lots of them. We're so proud of his accomplishments in such a short period. That's awesome. I'm going to go into one of the other ones, because you guys write in on several different places on Facebook, which is all too cool. Somebody's saying progress. Another person, when my daughter engages in conversation with me, lasts only a little while and not every day, but when it does happen, I feel more connected to her. Aren't those the most awesome days in the world? When your kids are talking to you, oh, it's just amazing. My husband will call me sometimes, if I'm out or something, and he'll say, we're just having the most amazing conversation right now. And I always love that. Okay. I'm totally lost in terms of where I am now. I know what I wanted to do. Let's see if I can get back there. There's nothing worse than having to talk to somebody while they're preoccupied with what they're doing on the computer. And I can't walk and talk and chew gum at the same time. It's a problem. I wanted to read, there was one of the ones, there were so many from yesterday with the ridiculous things you've ever heard someone say about autism. I encourage you to go and look at those. But there was one from like a week ago that I just never got to, that I felt really bad about. And I don't know which one it was, so it doesn't matter. We're going to leave it. In any case, I think it was the what do you wish you had time for? And I can't find it. That's all right. We're going to take a break. And when we come back, I have a cognition tip for you. This is that thing that we were talking about, the difference, teaching about thinking and the difference between thinking and knowing and believing. And how do we teach this to our kids on the autism spectrum? Because guess what? We can. Stick with us.
I'm Adele Nadowski, Director and Co-Creator of Skills. CARD e-learning is an online tool that has been developed by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. CARD e-learning is the training that is delivered to the ABA therapists at CARD to train them on the principles of applied behavior analysis and to equip them with the knowledge they need to essentially deliver the ABA-based techniques during their therapy with the children that they work with. ABA has been proven scientifically to be the most effective intervention for children with autism. At this point, even the Surgeon General has come out with a statement suggesting just that. So we know that this is something that children with autism definitely need if they're going to improve and live the lives that we're hoping that they're going to be able to live. By being able to train people on this one particular method that we know works, and to be able to have all of your staff within your school settings on the same page, it allows you to take more of a multidisciplinary approach, and there's definite consistency going on within the team. It makes sure that every person involved with that child's treatment program, including the speech and language pathologist, the occupational therapist, the teachers, the aides, all of these individuals to be able to be trained so that they can all work together effectively with the child. Parents that are using CARD e-learning can use it either to train themselves, and then after having done that they can implement different techniques with their child in order to teach new skills. But oftentimes parents might also be working either with an ABA provider, with a school, or they may have even hired their own therapist to deliver the intervention techniques. So CARD e-learning can be used either to collaborate with your school. It can also be used to train the therapists that are coming to the home of the parents, or it can also be shared with the ABA provider so that that provider can find out about it and perhaps implement it within their organization and train their staff. You can also do reporting for your organization. So you can actually look and find out which teachers are progressing, what their quiz scores are, and actually we can give you reports as well that will help you to compare the different teachers and their performances. CARD e-learning is really, really simple to use. You can log on to this as long as you have a computer, that's all you need, and an internet connection. And you can work on it any time of the day, anywhere that you're at. When you log on, you realize that right away. First of all, on the top of the page, there's a navigational tutorial. It's a how to use this page button. Simply by watching that video, it'll all kind of unfold in front of you, and it becomes extremely self-explanatory. CARD e-learning has 9 modules, and you can basically go through those at your own pace. You're going to be watching videos that are kind of like a storyboard with narration, but in addition to that, there's many different video clips of therapists actually implementing the techniques that are being described within the storyboard that you can also watch. And then of course you're able to pause, you're able to type notes right directly underneath the video that you're watching. You can save your notes, you can review them, and between each module you do take a quiz, and once you pass that quiz you can go on to the next module. And then after you complete all of them, you have a final exam. And by completing the final exam and passing with a score of 85% or better, you will be given a certificate of completion. Let me show you how easy it is to use CARD e-learning.
Welcome back to Autism Live, and I need to remind all of you, we were talking yesterday, I've talked to you before about the fact that I personally use Skills at Home. I'm their biggest fan. I know it gets ridiculous because I love it, so I talk about it. But you guys have a couple of interesting opportunities before you. Many of you have written in and said, I don't know what to do for the summer. I'm so afraid my child's going to lose Skills. I can't afford a whole bunch. And right now they have a special on Skills that if you buy it for 1 month, you get it for the rest of the summer for free. So you're going to pay for 1 month and get 3 months for it. So pretty incredible. And that's where you need to go to sign up for that. I also have to tell you that they're doing a giveaway too for somebody. Some lucky winner is going to win 6 months for free. So if you're thinking, okay, I really, the 3 months, paying 1 month and getting 3 months for 1 month is a great deal, but I'd really rather have 6 months for free. There's a contest that you can enter right now. If you go to the Center for Autism and Related Disorders page on Facebook, that's what I'm trying to say. And scroll down, there is a place that you can go to that says enter our skills giveaway. We're giving away 6 months of skills for free to one lucky winner. And there's a link that you can go to. I can read it to you, but it's, you're never going to go to the Facebook site. It's much easier because it's got a bunch of numbers after it. So, or you can go to facebook.com/skills4autism and you'll see that there's a place there that you can join. That's probably easier. Facebook.com/skills4autism. Okay, so win 6 months for free. I'm telling you, it's life-changing. And, it's there, and I think it's so worth trying. Okay, because it's done wonderful things for us. Alrighty then, it's time for our cognition tip. And I love the cognition curriculum, by the way, in skills, because, and almost all the lessons that we talk about here, they're all lined up in skills. And if you're wondering how I know about these things, it's because of skills. And because I have access to skills, and these are the lessons that, first of all, my son had that therapists, a lot of times it was that therapists came and did these same lessons that are in skills with my son, but now I have the opportunity to do them with my son at home. It's a very exciting thing. And I, in particular, it's like having a favorite child, right? It's really, if you have 8 children, who's your favorite? You never want to say you have favorites, right? But whenever I talk about the cognition curriculum in skills or the executive functions curriculum, I get excited because you're not going to find anything like it anyplace else. And it's really cutting edge, fabulous. And I've seen it work in my home. I was talking to you guys before about stuff that happened on Mother's Day, that for the first time I got to talk with my son about what he thinks and how his brain works. And it was really, really exciting to me. But yesterday, I went to my son's school. And the last hour of the day, they were going to be doing these presentations. And because we live in the state of California, in 3rd grade standards, they have to learn the evolution of how our community, our particular community, came to be. And so the teacher split up the project into pairs. They were pairs and a couple of trios. But my son was in a pair with another child, not my son. And they had to put together a presentation that each of them had a part of the speech that they had to do, and then they had to put together some sort of 3-dimensional representation of whatever it was they were talking about. And in my son's case, and he'd been talking about it a little bit at home, but it was a thing that they completely did at school, didn't bring it home to work on at all. And he'd been telling me, I said, "What's your speech on today?" And he said, "Well, the Titanians." And I said, "What is that?" And it's not a what, it's a who. The Titanians, Mom. You don't know about the Titanians? I don't think I'm even saying it right, because this is how little I knew about it. Apparently, it was a tribe of Native Americans that settled in our little area of California, and they did cave paintings that I didn't even know this was in my neighborhood. But my son educated me about this. In any case, so I'm going to go and I'm going to take pictures, because that's one of the things that I do. I mentioned yesterday about giving back, and I go and take pictures of things that the class does that I can get to, and I put together a little slideshow with some music for the kids at the end of the year, and they always think it's great. And the teachers really appreciate it. Okay, so I go there and I'm going to take the pictures, and as I get there, the kids are doing their last little run through. It's a Monday, right? And it's time, and my son and his partner, they're the first ones up. And they get up to do their speech, and they're not holding any papers. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is a memorized thing. I didn't even know that this we do. Why didn't they send this home? We would have worked on this at home. And But they got up, and the other young man got up, and he has quite the stage presence, and he delivered his part of the speech. And then it was Jem's turn, and he delivered the first part of his speech. He stumbled a little bit in the memorization and had difficulty, but then he remembered it and thanked everybody. And they went to go get the little model to carry it around and show everybody. Now, the little boy that he was, the young man, that he was partnered with, is one of those, He's like an alpha male, has a lot of intense energy, gets very excited, tends to be a little bit on the, he wants to do it and he wants to do it his way. I don't want to use the word bossy, but if I were going to use a word, you know what I'm saying? And this is usually a really good mix with my son because, then the person will say, come over here, you're doing this, da 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 da. Although my son is getting to the point where, him being with a bossy person isn't necessarily always the best possible configuration. But anyway, they went to take the little diorama around and show, and the other boy was saying, I'll hold it. And Jem was making motions like he wanted to hold it. The teacher was busy with something else. Nobody was sort of intervening. I was like, let him hold it, you know what I mean? But watching to see if my son was going to assert himself, and he was a little bit, but then he backed off. And then they got to take questions from the kids. The kids raised their hands, and the other boy was doing all of the calling on, and I was going, why isn't my son stepping up and saying, no, I get to ask a question, I get to pick, as well. And he did answer some of the questions. He stepped forward and answered the ones that he knew. It was very cute. It was very wonderful, but I was really feeling like, why didn't my son assert himself? And, all of this. So we get in the car to go home. And by the way, I watched the rest of the speeches. The kids did such a good job, but my son and this other boy were the only ones who memorized. Everybody else went up with their paper, and I didn't even know that they had the choice. And they were like, oh, no, we've got it memorized. So it was very fascinating. And with all the other, and I'm watching all the other neurotypically developing kids in the classroom, and it's time for them to all carry around their little diorama, and there's always one person who's like, I'll carry it, and the other person's going, no, I get to carry it too. And they're having this little discussion, and the teacher is reminding them, no, you both get to carry it. And so I'm seeing that the other kids, and I'm going, oh, the other kids are asserting themselves and my son's not asserting himself. So we got in the car to go home, and I said, hey, that was a really great speech that you did, and I really enjoyed that, and I loved how you had it memorized. You did such a good job. I'm so proud of you. You did wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. I'm just wondering, when somebody, did you not want to hold the thing? And he goes, no, I really wanted to hold it. And I said, well, you can say something. And here I'm thinking, oh, it's another thing I got to work on, and I said, you could have asserted yourself. I said, sometimes you just got to tell people what you need. You got to use your words, pal. And you got to say, hey, I get a turn too. Did you see that the other kids were doing that? He goes, oh yeah, I did. But part of the assignment was being respectful of what other people need and what they want. And I know that, and he said the little boy's name, he said, I know that he really likes to hold the thing. And I said, what? And he said, well, it's just being respectful. Part of being a good partner is knowing what the other person really likes to do. And he said, and I tried to hold on to it a couple of times, but I was trying to remember that he really likes to hold on to it. So I know that I could have said something to him, Mom, but I was trying to be a respectful partner. And I just had this moment in the car where I realized that, here I am thinking, oh, well, the autism, he wasn't asserting himself. No, he was being incredibly empathetic, which is not on the spectrum. That in that moment, my child, who has an autism diagnosis, was looking at the other child and deciding that his needs were greater than his, that it was more important to his, that he was so taking perspective that he cheated himself out of something in consideration of the other child. That in that moment, if we were to look at this on a chart, in that moment, of the two children, my son was demonstrating less autism than the other child, who clearly is not on the spectrum, but who was clearly not taking my son's feelings and thoughts into consideration. But my son was thinking so far ahead that he was saying, I don't want to take this away from him. It's really important to him. A big moment. I did say, well, it's so great to be respectful, and it's so great to be thinking about what other people need. But you know what? You can't be a doormat either. There's no happy medium anywhere, right? And I said, it's really important that you get what you need too. Now, how do you teach that? Woo, case by case, right? And you hope that it generalizes in the proper way. But I was so proud of him. So proud of him that he was thinking about the other boy and his preferences and what he likes to do and what he needs. And he said, it wasn't as important to me, and I know it's really important to him. How glad am I that my son has the words to tell me that, because otherwise I just would have assumed that he wasn't asserting himself and that was the autism. And in fact, it was quite the opposite. Yeah, there's other things with the autism we still have to work on, but that was an incredible moment. Okay, and how does this relate to cognition? Because when we're in the cognition curriculum, we're looking at other people's preferences, what other people are thinking, what other people need, and taking them into consideration, and starting to build in this idea of taking other people's perspective. And so I give this as an example of where we have gotten with my son who never showed any empathy, except if it was a baby crying. And I don't know that it was so much empathy, but there was something about when a baby would cry, my son would become very anxious and agitated and be like, fix it, fix it, fix it. That was the only thing emotionally that he would recognize. I could be crying and he either wouldn't notice or found it incredibly funny. My son wasn't able to take other people's perspective, and he is all the time now in circumstances where we didn't even teach it. So quite amazing. And that from the cognition curriculum. He's also beginning to demonstrate, that in conversations, because we teach about thinking, what thinking is and how they think and how other people think things. And then we teach about beliefs and about knowing things, the difference between knowing something and believing it, and false beliefs, and beginning to understand that sometimes people act in a certain way because they're thinking something, or they act in a certain way because they know something, or they act in a certain way because they have a belief, and sometimes that belief is false. And frequently you might have a perspective where you can see that that belief is false, and they're in, humor and a lot of sitcoms, right? And they can't see it because of their perspective. It's sort of the sleight of hand thing. And it's so fascinating now to talk about with my son about things like a magic act. And he says, oh, well, what the audience thinks, and they can't see this, and this person, there's that one magic trick that comedians will do, and it's all about focus, and the audience can see what's happening, where they put something in front of somebody and they're like, okay, so here is the thing, and it's a sleight of hand thing where they put their focus on this, and they throw whatever the thing is, literally throw it over their head, but the person who's standing there can't see that. And the magician says, so where did it go? And the person who's standing right there says, I don't know, where did that go? And the audience is in tears laughing because they've seen them throw it over their head. And my son is starting to understand that the person standing there, from their perspective, they have a belief that it's disappearing, but that's a false belief. But nonetheless, they're taking in information in a limited format, so they're formulating their beliefs around that. Well, then you can apply that to other circumstances. It's really quite amazing. And again, all of these lessons are available in the skills program, and I get to live the benefit of when kids have these lessons and they're taught really well. And you can too. You have access to them. So that's my cognition and my story for the day. I was so proud of my little boy. Not a little boy anymore. He's about to be 9. In any case, these lessons work. I know this firsthand. So I hope you'll take a look at them. You have the opportunity to win 6 months of skills, or pay for 1 month right now and you're going to get the rest of the summer for free. So that's pretty exciting. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we are going to talk about the myth of the day, and then at the top of the hour, we're going to be visiting with Jennifer Yakos, who's a BCBA. We're going to be talking about community outings, but stick with us for the myth of the day next. We'll be right back.
ACT Today, or Autism Care and Treatment Today, was founded in 2004 by several passionate parents who believe that access to early, effective treatment is vital for individuals with autism. Together with Dr. Doreen Graham-Pache, the world's leading provider of therapy for autism, this group created ACT Today to do just as the name implies, take action immediately to treat autism spectrum disorders.
A lot of families and parents and even physicians don't yet accept the fact that we are recovering children with autism.
In 2006, inspired by her struggle to get treatment for her young son Wyatt, television producer and author Nancy Alspaugh Jackson and her husband Reed hosted a backyard benefit for the foundation called Denim and Diamonds for Autism. Tens of thousands of dollars were raised, and in 2008, Alspaugh Jackson took the helm of ACT Today as executive director.
This country has to come together to save a generation of children.
With a dedicated board of directors, a small but committed staff called the A-Team as in autism, ACT Today is making a huge difference in the lives of children across the country. Grants that fund programs for behavior therapy, special needs schools, and summer camps. Medical needs like diagnostic tests and special diets. Basic safety equipment such as helmets for children who repetitively bang their heads, and fencing for those who wander. Assisted technologies and assistance dogs.
Hi, my name is Max, and I love my iPad too. It's so great. I can take photos.
In 2010, ACT for Military Families became the first national campaign to benefit military children with autism.
I'm Joe Montaigne. As a father of a daughter with autism, I know the challenges that brings.
ACT Today continues to educate and raise national awareness on the need for early and intensive intervention for an epidemic that affects at least 1 in 110 children.
I called on November 1st. And I'm like, how am I going to get notified? How are you going to let me know? And they ended up looking and they informed me that he had received the grant, which was like a blessing from above.
ACT Today, fulfilling its mission of helping families with autism, one child at a time.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I wanted to mention briefly that in that montage video that you just saw about autism care and treatment today, you saw some pictures of Dr. Doreen Graham-Pichet, and we just want to congratulate her because over the weekend she was given an award. She received the Fearless Woman Visionary Award, which I think is incredibly fitting, and we want to send our congratulations to her. Certainly well-deserved, an incredible woman, Dr. Doreen Graham-Pichet, the founder of the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and also the founder of Autism Care and Treatment Today. And you also saw Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson in that video, and she's going to be joining us tomorrow at 11 o'clock. She is our co-host for the hour that is called Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I always love it when she comes in. She is one incredible, powerful woman, and I always feel like I get to, you know, how there's some people that they have such energy, and you get to, like, you know, get a little bit of energy that you get to take with you after you're with them. That's Nancy, boy. So it's always fun when she's here. And our special guest tomorrow when she's here is going to be Joey Travolta, who I've never met. I'm really excited because I know so many parents who talk about what he's been able to do with them, with their children in terms of filmmaking. And if you think about it, what a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for some of our children to learn not only filmmaking skills, but it's another way of communicating. So very exciting about that. Okay, Joey Travolta with us tomorrow at 11 o'clock during Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. It is that time of the day for us to talk about the myth of the day. And we were just talking about cognition and executive functions and the fact that those two curriculums and skills are really cutting edge. Really, you're not going to find it anyplace else because there are a lot of people who think that you can't teach a child a better way to think. Well, if you stop and think about that, how could that possibly be true? If you can teach things from a behavioral perspective, and we all know that if we change the thoughts that we're thinking, we change our outcomes, right? I think everybody's on that same page that if you walk around and are constantly saying to yourself, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it, likelihood is you're not going to do it. But if you walk around and say, I think I can, I think I can, I think I can, your odds of being able to do whatever the thing is are greatly improved. We've all read that book to our kids, right? I think I can, I think I can. I just shared that in terms of cognition, boy, the lessons that are in skills that they did at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders worked brilliantly with my son. He is taking other people's thoughts and feelings and needs and preferences into consideration on a daily basis. It's a beautiful thing. But we had somebody ask us last week on the show if social skills could be taught. And we had Dr. Jonathan Tarbox in here last Friday to talk about that, about the fact that you can teach social skills. I know for a lot of you around the world, it's definitely a part of the diagnosis, right? And it doesn't matter who your child is and what their current diagnosis is, whether it's PDD, NOS, whether it's Asperger's or classic autism, chances are that it's the one common thing that our children have. It's a delay in their ability to perform socially, right? And it's an ongoing thing, and it's going to change over the years. What's a social difficulty for a 2-year-old is going to be vastly different than a social difficulty for a 10-year-old, and it's going to be vastly different for somebody who's 20, right? So we need to, if we can teach our children social skills, which guess what? I'm going to give you the hidden answer, we can. And we need to keep changing what it is we're teaching to accommodate for what is age appropriate for them, right? We need to get our children caught up so that if we're teaching an 8-year-old, we want to be teaching them things that are appropriate for an 8-year-old, but we need to get them caught up on the skills that a typically developing 8-year-old would have to meet those challenges in an 8-year-old world. So how do we do that? And again, we want to look at exactly where a child is and fill in some skills. But one of the big social skills that we want to start with is eye contact. And we've talked before about the fact that principle number 1 in ABA is that in order to maintain any behavior, and when we're social animals, right? And when we're out in a social situation, our behavior is going to dictate how we are met by other people. If you're walking down the street and you have your finger stuck up your nose, right? People are going to behave differently around you than if you're walking down the street and smiling at everybody. It's it's just the nature of the beast. That's the social world that we live in. How we're behaving is going to change how people behave towards us. So starting with eye contact, because we know that that's sort of a basic, and that we can start with a 2-year-old, we can start with an 8-month-old on eye contact. If we make it reinforcing enough for them, we're going to see more eye contact. And we can go from there into a whole set of social skills that we can teach somebody. Not only, this week we've been talking about language skills, but there's a whole area that's just social language skills. When it's appropriate to jump into a conversation, I got to tell you, one of my favorite lessons that I personally love in the skills program is a lesson about joining a conversation. Because it breaks it down just like tying shoes. We've talked about task analysis before, about if you're going to tie your shoes, what are all the steps that are involved in, and all the skills that you need to be able to do. And there's finger and motor skills, gross motor skills that you need to be able to do to tie a shoe. Well, they do the same thing with joining a conversation. So imagine, if you will, there's a group of people sitting in a room, and let's just talk about it from an adult perspective, that if an adult walks into a room and there's a bunch of people sitting and they're talking, let's say you're at a party and you walk across the threshold into this room and there's people sitting in, kind of a circle, but it's not a perfect circle. They're sitting around the room and they're having a conversation. What are all the things that you need to do to appropriately join that conversation? Well, to be really successful, one of the first things that you need to do is enter the room and enter physically that circle. Because if you're standing on the outside of the circle and you attempt to join the conversation, you're only going to be able to make eye contact with the people who can see you and not the people who are sitting in front of you. So one of the first things to do to set up for success is, if you can, to physically insinuate yourself into whatever the shape. It might be a triangle, might be a rectangle, it might be an oval, might be a circle, but to physically get and to physically put yourself in a circumstance where you're asking for entrance to the group and you're given it. That there is a way to do that without making a big deal about it, but when you physically put your body in a shape, and usually somebody sitting next to you will notice you and move over, make room. It's like the invitation. It's completely unspoken, but it is communication. There is verbal language happening to negotiate that coming into the circle. Now that you're in the circle, some of the behavior that you need to do is be making eye contact at people in the circle so that they're acknowledging that you're there and you're listening. You're using your receptive language skills to hear what the conversation is about, because how polite is it and how well received is it if somebody walks into the room and in the middle of people talking just interrupts and says, hey, did you know that turtles in the Bahamas, whatever, with some strange fact. And how does everybody behave? Everybody looks and goes, we're talking about what happened in the news yesterday. And everybody gives that weird look of, who are you and why are you here? The cold shower kind of a thing. So you need to listen to the conversation and establish what the conversation is about. You need to take note of, do I have something to add to this conversation? Is it possible that the thing that I have to add to the conversation is something that already got said? Is this an appropriate conversation for me to join? Is this a private conversation? Looking at the way everybody is holding their body to see whether it is okay to add to the conversation. Then deciding, all right, I do have something to add to the conversation. I'm reasonably sure that it hasn't already been said. And so putting your body now into a position where you're letting people know that you have something to say, whether it's leaning forward, making eye contact with somebody, nodding and going yes, waiting for that pause in the conversation, pitching your voice at a volume that you can come into the conversation and be heard by people so that you don't get run over by somebody else. So many things to keep track of, right? Really hard. And you see somebody who's very good at it and they do it seamlessly, right? And then you watch another adult, typically developing adult, right, that does not have an autism diagnosis, that might have trouble with it. But you'll notice if you watch, and I do watch now very carefully because I just think this is interesting and this is not what my background is in, but I now watch at a party to see who is capable of doing it and who isn't. And what's the difficulty for the person who's having difficulty. And sometimes it's just one little element of it. And if we teach the person that one little element, then suddenly they're able to join the conversation and have a good time and be successful. Same thing is true for our kids. We're going to teach all of those different things that we just talked about, but we're going to teach them separately and see where they are skill-wise before we try to put it together. And then we're going to put it together in a really safe environment before we take it out into the environment to try it. It's really very amazing. And that's just one little social skill. We can do that with all of the social skills. It's really fascinating to me. But we can, end of the day, we can teach social skills and strengthen them in our children. Okay, it's time for a break. When we come back, we're going to be joined via Skype with Jennifer Yakos at BCBA, who's going to be talking with us about how to take our children out into the community to have an opportunity to work on some of the things we've been working on in the home as we go out into those community settings, having a really good time in a community outing. Stick with us.
Hi, I'm Monique Erickson. I'm a senior supervisor here at CARD in the training department.
How can we make a non-preferred outing, someplace that the child doesn't want to go, be less stressful and not be a battle?
Well, when you're looking at planning some of these outings to places that are a little more difficult for our kids, there's a lot of things you need to think about going in, and I think one of the first things you need to do is have a realistic expectation. It's going to be difficult, and it's not going to be something that you might be able to do right off the bat. There's some work that goes into that and a lot of steps that go into that. You're going to want to look back and look at the behaviors. What's happening in this outing? Why is it so difficult? Where does it break down? Do we not even get through the front door? Is that the problem? Or do we get through the front door and then my child has an agenda that doesn't match mine? And then that's what we need to work on. I've had lots of families where we've worked on this. This is definitely an area that we work on in our programs. And for example, I had one little boy where we couldn't even get through the front door. So that's what we practiced. And you had to have the expectation that you knew you weren't going to the store to shop this time. We were going to go and we were going to practice this thing. This behavior of entering for whatever reason was difficult for him. That's what we were going to practice and reinforce and take baby steps to this end behavior called grocery shopping that had all these little baby steps along the way. And just remember that it is difficult, that you have to step back and do all these steps to get there, but you will get there. And you're not going to get there if you don't practice it and do it. So you have to get out there and do it, as much as it may be difficult to be in the community and having these kind of meltdowns and these difficult behaviors with people around. you have to practice these skills to get them better. So it's important to do that. So for this little guy, we did just that. We took it from step one, he couldn't get through the door. We practiced that until that got better, and then we took on the next step. And eventually, he was able to participate in their grocery shopping. Not to say that it was an hour and it was perfect. It was more realistic. They had a few things on their list. He was able to go through, help get these things, and then they went on their way. But that took a lot of work and a lot of steps getting up to that point.
So what are some strategies for going to a big shopping center like a Walmart?
Some strategies just in general to keep in mind is, do you need some visual supports? Do you need some kind of visual thing, like first we're going to do this and then we're going to do this? Sometimes that's really helpful for our kids, just to know what to expect. Okay, this isn't going to last forever. We're just going to do a few things and then we get to leave this place and do something else. And that sometimes will help just alleviate that frustration that they don't really know what to expect. How long is this going to be? And so sometimes that visual support could help. You want to practice this realistically. You don't go from never having these outings to an hour. So you're building up systematically to these longer outings, so that eventually you get to a point of some duration that you can actually do something functional in that. You can actually get some items in the store and when you go there, versus just practicing a couple minutes here and there. So I think those are some things you want to think about early on. If you're going to that bigger store, I think for our kids, helpful to, depending on where their skill level is, and if you're practicing these skills, hopefully you can kind of give them, like, this is what's going to happen. This is what the rules are, kind of thing. This is what if you can do X, Y, and Z when you're in there, this is what will happen, kind of thing. Kind of be very concrete and give them an idea. Okay, we're going to go in and we're going to do this, and if you do this, this will happen. This is the behavioral contingency in place. If you don't, then we're going to need to leave, and then this will happen, kind of thing. But be very clear so that it's kind of like the rules are on the table. It's fair game. Like, we're going in, this is what's going to happen, and this is how it will be. When you're looking at stores like Walmart, very loud, lots of stuff going on, I think just prepare yourself and be realistic about that. Is it going to be overstimulating? Can your child handle that? Do you need to take baby steps going into those bigger environments? Maybe know exactly what you need from that store. If you really need to do a lot of browsing and just taking your time, maybe is there a time that you will have an opportunity to not have to bring them with you for that, and only bring them when you have a specific agenda, like I'm going in for these items, we're going to get them, and we're going to leave. So those are some things I would keep in mind when you're doing that.
What kinds of reinforcement should we give for doing a good job on an outing?
When you're doing these outings, something that is really important, it's important no matter what we're teaching, but definitely when you're out in the community and you're doing these type of outings that they're not preferred from our kids, you want to make sure you're always reinforcing those behaviors we want to see more of as the cornerstone to what we do. You reinforce the behaviors you want to see more of so they keep happening, and that's got to happen when you're in those community settings. So when the child is attending and he's sitting there quietly or helping you, gather things in the store if that's what you're working on, you make sure you're appraising and reinforcing them so that they know that this is a behavior we want to see more of. That may be, for some of our earlier learners, that may not just be verbal praise. It may have to be a tangible to get them through that situation. So it could be a little snack here and there to reinforce them and keep them on track. Like, oh, you're doing a great job. That's so good. I like the way you're sitting so quietly and waiting for mommy. Here's a little snack or something like that. So you might need something like that for those little ones that are early on in that experience. Or maybe you can just get to verbal praise at some point. Just depends on the learner, but you definitely want to keep them reinforced during that whole experience.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. It's Tuesday, and on Tuesdays we generally have an expert join us. Today we have the wonderful Jennifer Yakos with us, and she is going to be talking with us about community outings. Jennifer, are you there?
I'm here.
I can see you. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you being here. I know you've had a bit of a cold, but you're such a trooper, and you're joining us today to talk about this important topic. But let's start, Jennifer, with what your title is at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders.
Okay. Well, I am a senior clinical supervisor, and I'm also a clinical trainer. So I work out of the CARD San Diego office, and so I do supervise still local cases, but I also work with our CARD training department. which we do just about everything under the sun.
Yeah, you guys you're very active. You have a lot to do, and you wear many different hats. So, but you're a wonderful teacher. I know I've learned a lot from you, so I'm sure that you're fabulous in terms of the training. And I really appreciate you being here today to talk about this subject. So, when we talk about community outings, it's a big field, and I think there's lots of room for misunderstanding. But why, and one of the things we talked about the other day is that people and the outside world, outside our community, will frequently look at us and think, oh, well, if your child's having difficulties, you should just keep them at home. And that's really wrong, is it not?
Completely wrong. Absolutely wrong. I mean, so many levels that's wrong,
Yeah. But for parents who are watching and I know I certainly got to a place, even while we were doing ABA, where I got very homebound, where we stayed home, we did a lot of therapy, and our supervisor, Sabrina, would say, nope, we got to get this out into the community. We have to give this program legs. But why? Tell the folks at home why it's so important to take our kids out into the community.
Well, I mean, to put it in a nutshell, we don't live our lives sitting at a table in a room.
Yeah.
We don't live our lives just in our house. The majority of the time that we spend on a daily basis is out in the community. And so one of the things that we have to really seriously consider with the children and with the intervention programs is how can we enable these skills to generalize to the natural environment? Because that's where it really counts. It doesn't necessarily matter so much if, the child can do all of these amazing skills at home or, in this very kind of confined environment, but can they actually do it when they're at school, when they're at the grocery store, when they're at the park, when they're at, a restaurant? So we need to embed the opportunities for them to practice the skills that they're learning into these new environments, because we know one of the deficits for many children with autism is that they don't automatically generalize.
Talk to us a little bit about generalization. We talk about it on the show all the time, but I would rather have you give them an explanation than me. What exactly is generalization, and why are we always working towards it?
Okay, so generalization basically refers to your ability to take what you've learned in one setting under one condition and then do it in other settings, in other conditions that you haven't been specifically taught in. Okay, so if I'm going to generalize a skill, I want to make sure that I generalize it to different people. So if I've learned to say hi to people, when they wave, I wave back. I need to make sure that not only can I do that with my therapist and with my parents, but I can also do it with a friend on the playground, that I can do it with my teacher at school, then I can do it with the man who works at the grocery store. So we need to make sure that we're providing opportunities for the children to learn, to engage in that skill with different people, with different, settings. So maybe within an environment that's different from home. So can I do it when I'm at the park? Can I do it when I'm at the baseball game or on the playground with my friends? And then generalizing also to different objects. So understanding that just because I've learned that this one particular item is called a cup, that it also generalizes and means the same thing when I use different cups, when I use different variations of that same item. So we need to make sure we provide a lot of those opportunities to generalize these skills. And one of the most important and effective ways that we do that is through community outings.
Okay, great. So, and I'm always saying, because this is one of the things that was said to me early on, that a hallmark of a really good program, ABA program, is one that plans for generalization from the get-go. That it's got to be paramount, because that's when we get to a child actually possessing a skill instead of just doing something they learned by rote.
Exactly. Generalization really should occur from day one. As soon as the child is starting to show certain skills, particularly things like requesting or manding or following simple instructions, we want to get those things happening in the natural environment as soon as possible, because that's when it's going to be functional And that's when it's going to actually be motivating for that learner to use the skill. And that's going to help them maintain the skill over time.
Great. So now we know all these really good reasons why we should be doing community outings. Why do you think that it's so difficult for us and that we tend not to do as many as we really could? So what are all the things, the reasons why parents like me go, I don't want to?
Outings are scary, aren't they? They can be very scary. It's an unpredictable world out there. And, you know, one of the issues that many of the kids that we work with have is dealing with unpredictable situations. You know, when things aren't familiar to me, a lot of times behaviors increase. And so behaviors increase a lot of times at community outings because kids don't necessarily understand the appropriate ways to behave in certain situations. There's a lot of things going on that may cause anxiety for them. And so that might increase their behaviors as well. And when our children's behaviors go up, then our anxiety goes up because then we can't necessarily, you know, help them in the way that, you know, sometimes we just don't know what to do. And so I think what holds a lot of families back is just the reality of when I go into a community outing, it's very difficult for my child. They tend to engage in a lot of inappropriate or socially inappropriate behaviors, and it's very uncomfortable for me to be in that situation.
Yeah. I think too, you know, and thank you for saying that, Jennifer, because it really, you know, sometimes we're so busy in our own existence that we forget the reasons why we're not doing stuff. And you just brought up something that I always used to think it was just me, because you'll be at home and gaining new skills and doing such a great job, and you feel like so hopeful, and then you take your child out and they behave in a way you go, I thought we were past that. And that's a really emotional thing. We want them to do the best behavior when they're out when other people are watching, and yet so often it's the exact opposite.
Absolutely. It's always the exact opposite, isn't it?
But thank you for saying that, because that reminds me that it isn't just me. So that's wonderful. You know what we're going to do? We're going to take a short little break, and when we come back, we're going to ask Jennifer to tell us some things to set ourselves up for success when we go on those community outings for us and for our children. So stick with us, and we're going to be back in just a minute with more with Jennifer Yakos. Excuse me.
I'm Joe Montaigne. As a father of a daughter with autism, I know the challenges that brings. Military families impacted by autism wage a battle on two fronts. One for their country, and another for their children.
I know you God knows we're in a battle zone. Well, I'm fighting the war back here, and I'm fighting it all alone.
With 1 in 88 military children diagnosed with autism, the families face extraordinary challenges. But there is hope. With intensive treatment, the lives of children with autism and their families can be changed. You can make a difference.
The day we've all been waiting for. Maybe
to learn how you can help a military child with autism, go to acttodayformilitaryfamilies.org. Thank you.
Maybe tomorrow.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We are joined right now by our special guest, Jennifer Yakos. We're talking about community outings, when we go out into the outer world and take our children with us and try to work on some of the different things that they have been learning. And Jennifer just went through some of the reasons why it's so important that we go for these community outings, and also some of the reasons why it can be power-packed with reasons not to do it, that sometimes our children engage in more behaviors. It's frustrating for us, it's frustrating for them sometimes. There's a lot of more variables that we can't always control, but we still have to do it. So Jennifer, how can we set ourselves up for success? How can we set our kids up for success as we start to think about doing community outings?
Yeah, there are many things that you can do to, start off on the right foot, because, we want to make this a positive, enjoyable experience for your child, as it should be. There's so many things that you should be able to participate in as a family. So a couple of things just right off the bat that you can do is to start small. Don't get in over your head, especially at the beginning. So be specific. maybe think about what are some common locations, some very familiar places that you might want to travel with your child. So oftentimes we start with, real just kind of basic functional places like going to the grocery store or going to a restaurant or just simply going to someplace like Walmart, okay? Those things can be very overwhelming for our child, but at the same point, those are places that you commonly go to on a daily or weekly basis. So maybe think about all the different locations that you visit frequently and maybe start with one that doesn't present quite as many challenges, okay? So if Walmart is, the place where everything just sort of unravels, maybe don't start there. Start with something that's a little bit more controlled, that's a little bit easier for you and your child to maneuver through. And a lot of it is to be very specific with the targets that you want to work on. So don't try to work on 5 or 10 different things all at once. Pick 1 or 2 things that you want to really work on and stick with that, because that's going to be much more manageable for you and also for your child to be successful.
Yeah, and there's a measure of age appropriate too in terms of what you're working on. I think I remember very early on when therapists would go with us and we would go to someplace like a grocery store or Walmart. There were different considerations for where he was in terms of his skill level, and in terms of what was appropriate. And I can remember the first day that they said to us, "Okay, we're gonna now," because he had been in the shopping cart, in the little basket in the shopping cart, and I had him strapped in, and still it was, a hairy thing for me. But the first day that they said, "Okay, we're going to teach him today to hold on to the cart and walk next to the cart." And, I imagine that there's a time and a place that becomes age appropriate and skill appropriate. I was terrified, Jennifer. I was absolutely terrified. And I had a therapist with me to help me. I can't imagine that it would be advisable to do that without 2 people, one to steer the cart and one to steer the child the first time.
That's right. Well, but here's the thing too, Shannon, is that what I oftentimes tell parents is try to, practice outings before you actually have to go out on one for real. So in other words, if you can plan ahead and say, okay, I'm going to take my child to the grocery store because we're going to practice appropriate behavior in the grocery store, but I'm going to do it at a time where I don't actually need to do grocery shopping.
Good point.
Okay?
Yes.
Because if you don't have to multitask and try to deal with your child's behaviors and reinforce the appropriate behaviors and deal with that, at the same time that you're trying to actually get your shopping done, things are going to be so much easier for you and you're going to be able to remain so much more calm. Another thing that will help you at first is to keep the duration of the outing really short. So maybe, at most your child, if let's say you're working on, staying with mom by holding hands or holding onto the cart, and you know that realistically that's only going to be possible for a couple of minutes before he's going to want to run to the toy aisle. He's going to want to run to the ice cream aisle.
Yeah.
So keep the duration of your trip really short. Say, okay, we're going to go into the store. We're going to walk up and down about 4 or 5 aisles, and I'm going to be reinforcing him the whole time by staying with me and holding my hand, and then we're going to exit the store. So we're not even going to buy anything because I'm simply there just to work on the behavior.
Great. And so you mentioned reinforcing all the time. How do you work out reinforcement? Do you do a token economy, or is it different with every child? Are there a couple of different ways we can be doing it?
Yeah, it really is different for every child. And so you have to go with obviously what's successful and what's familiar with your child. But you have to plan ahead. And I think that's one of the biggest kind of, traps that people fall into is that they don't plan ahead with reinforcement and then they realize, oh my gosh, I don't have anything to reinforce the good behavior. So make sure you plan ahead. You have already determined what reinforcer is going to be and how often the child is going to need that reinforcer in order to, stay with you or in order to wait quietly or whatever particular target skill you're working. So some children do really well with token systems. And so the parent is there, rewarding the good behavior, every 20 to 30 seconds or every minute or whatever interval you feel is appropriate. And then once they get all their tokens, then that's when it's time to leave the store and they get access to a bigger reward. Other children might actually need to have food or primary reinforcers there in the store. So as they're staying with you, and every 30 seconds or every minute that they're staying with you without running away or without screaming or whatever behavior it is you're working on, then they get a little, cookie, or they get a raisin or something like that, so that you're immediately rewarding them with something that's pretty powerful. And then just like anything else, you want to fade that back, because it's when you do actually have to do your grocery shopping, it's not necessarily realistic that you can sit there with your token system and, do that. So you want to try to fade that out. But at first, you need to make sure you use heavy reinforcement to build up that success and help establish the appropriate behavior.
Okay, cool. Talk to me a little bit about when we're deciding to go to the store and we're setting ourselves up for success. So we're saying, okay, this is the behavior, or these are the 2 behaviors I'm going to target on the way to the store. Do we tell the child before we go into the store, this is what we're working on today and here's what the reinforcement is, or do we do a visual schedule, or does it matter for the child?
Again, it's going to matter for the child, but I absolutely think that most cases you're going to want to do that priming. You're going to want to tell them exactly what the expectations are. And so whether you do that, verbally by explaining it to them, or you have a visual schedule, I think a really good piece of language to use, or a good strategy to use, is that kind of first then language.
Ah, yes.
So first we're going to stay with mommy, then we're going to, get we're going to listen to music in the car, or we're going to get to hold a special toy or something.
Right.
Because that is very concrete, and I can understand that in order to get that desired item that I want, I have to engage in these 1 or 2 target behaviors. So sometimes you can, just do that through verbal priming and remind the child of the rule. First, stay with mommy, and, quiet words, and then we'll get to listen to the music on the way home. Or if you need to do that visually, where you have a visual schedule where it's first stay with mommy, then, desired activity, then that might be also helpful, because that's a visual reminder that might help them kind of through the process a little bit.
Okay. We're going to take another little break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about when you've set yourself up for success, you planned on the community outing, and all what breaks loose, and you get to the store, and it's all breaking down, and how we deal with that in the moment when we're out in public, because it's just the worst, right? It's the pits. So stick with us. We're going to take a break and be back with Jennifer Yakos in just a minute.
Here I stand, a man, someone who has overcome struggles, someone who has endured perceptions of what others thought of him, thinking he was stupid because he was autistic, or simply believing him to be nothing because he was different to them in their minds. But I stood my ground. I just wanted to say to the organization in general, alongside helping me to improve communicatively and socially, the other greatest gifts you gave me were the value of discipline and a good work ethic. To quote Anthony Kiedis, to celebrate you is greater now that I can. You helped me to realize that the harder you work, the likelier you are to achieve success. Having had to work very, very hard to recover from autism, this discipline has continued to serve me well. I also realized that you taught me a lot about and instilled within me a quality of having compassion and sympathy for other people. That you will be concerned more with the needs and wishes of others than with your own is something that I'm awe of, and I constantly strive to be. And in closing, the only way I can sum up CARD, all of you, is love. Everything you do to help families in need, you do out of the sheer love of wanting to make a positive difference in people's lives. And as I stand here before you as a mature adult, I have to say that I'm extremely grateful for your unwavering loving commitments to helping others and me recover from potential life roadblocks and become active and contributing members of society. While I can't overcome obstacles without a will, I cannot have a will without the love of those supporting me. And without love, I am nothing. Thanks again so very much for your love, everything that you've done and continue to do. Please give my best wishes to your families, everybody else with CARD who isn't here, and especially all of your clients and their kids. I'm confident that they too will be able to overcome, and I know that they'll be successful in what they do as long as they continue to put their minds, hearts, passions, and best efforts into it. Enough said.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Our special guest right now is Jennifer Yakos, and she's talking to us about community outings, how important they are, how we can set ourselves up for success, how we lower our expectations, and clear our decks so that when we're going in the beginning, we're going to someplace that's relatively easier and not having 1,000 things we have to accomplish there, that we're working on 1 or 2 things with our children. But I promised Jennifer when we came back we would talk about when you've set yourself up right, you've got your reinforcement there, you thought ahead about what 1 or 2 things you're working on in the store, you went to some place that wasn't a complete and total nightmare, you don't have to accomplish a whole lot, but you still get there, and your child starts to engage in challenging behavior, maybe you've got a tantrum, or even worse, a meltdown that's happening in this very public place. Give us the 411 about what can we do to help ourselves in that circumstance.
Yeah, that's so hard. And, the most important thing is to stay calm and to realize that, all children have meltdowns in stores.
It's true.
It's not just your own child. All children have meltdowns in stores. And so while what you're dealing with, might be more extreme or more severe, but again, you have to try to stay calm and take a deep breath. And because if you can stay calm, you're going to then be able to bring in all of the things that you're learning how to do. And your child isn't then going to feed off of your kind of, feelings of anxiety or being flustered. So stay calm. Try to go back to the things that you know. So again, not providing, excessive negative attention for the behavior, trying to prompt the child to do at least 1 or 2 things appropriately, and then trying to exit the store. Because maybe it's just an issue of, okay, we didn't foresee something coming. We didn't foresee a particular toy being located at that location, which sends my child into a tizzy, or maybe we had too high of expectations. So we just have to remain calm. We have to try to get through that situation by going back to the things redirecting and reinforcing, and if necessary, removing your child from the situation so that we can do it better next time.
Yeah, I think the being calm, it's so key. And, in the moment, I think what's interesting for me as a parent is that I think I'm being calm, I think I'm being cool and collected. But it wasn't until I saw therapists behave around my son when he was having a tantrum that I went, oh, that's what calm, cool, and collected looks like. That they're not having a reaction, they're not commenting on it. And when I saw them be that way and saw my son just stop behaving that way because it wasn't getting him anything, it was really amazing for me to realize, okay, even if I'm not feeling calm, cool, collected on the outside, I got to make it on the inside. I got to make it look that way on the outside.
Absolutely, because even though you might be, you're trying to maintain that calm kind of facade, but there might be something that you're doing just in your facial expression or in something that you're saying to your child that is then triggering the behavior more because they're getting that negative attention. So to try to just, act as if the behavior is not happening as best you can, prompt them to do something, that is appropriate, so that you can give them access to reinforcement and then leave the store.
Yeah. Just the other day I was in a store, and I don't think it was a child with autism, but there was a dad who was in the store with his little girl who was probably 2 years old, and the girl started to have her freak out, and I could hear them in the store wherever they were going as they would go down the different aisles because he kept on saying, stop it. Stop it. Quiet down. Knock it off. Knock it off right now. Stop it. Stop it. And he just had this running, and she would, and he would say, stop it, stop. He must have said stop it 100 times.
Yeah.
And I wanted to take my cart over and ram his cart with it just to get him to stop it. I didn't want to say to him, stop saying that, because then I would be doing it, right? But I wanted to go over and redirect him. I wanted to ram my cart with his and be like, oh, I'm so sorry, just to take the attention off of him saying stop it, stop it, stop it to the little girl. And finally, the mom found them and said, and it was amazing, amazing because it was one of those mom moments where she picked the child up out of the cart and she said, honey, you know what I need for you to go find, and sent him on an assignment somewhere in the store because she realized that he was creating this environment for the little girl. But, you know, I've done that before.
Oh, of course.
And stood there and said, not now.
The right thing, right?
Yeah, not now. Don't do this now. Stop doing this now. Of all moments in time, could you just not do this right now? That I, you know, can hear the words coming out of my mouth, and now I think to myself, not useful. But in the moment, sometimes I think we're so preoccupied with other stuff that we just say this garbage that is not useful to anybody. Stop it. Don't do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. It just comes out and you're not even aware of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Completely.
But as a parent, tell me, you know, make me feel better. Do you ever have, you know all this stuff, you have all these tools. Do you ever make mistakes like that, Jennifer, as a parent?
Oh, all the time.
Okay. So it isn't just us.
People, you know, oftentimes I kind of joke that nobody would ever know as behavior analysts by looking at the behavior of my children.
Okay, so we cut ourselves some slack too. If we do something and in the moment, you know, it isn't our highest parenting self moment, but, you know, maybe we learn from it in the future and say, okay, next time. Because the truth of the matter is that stuff isn't effective. That dad walking around and saying, stop it, stop it, stop it, it wasn't stopping it.
That's right. Because oftentimes, again, you might be appeasing the situation at that particular moment. Mm-hmm. So my child is having a meltdown. Okay, let me grab something to give them. Here's a candy bar. Okay? And so all of a sudden now my child is quiet. But again, we now have that expectation of next time I come to the store and I want a candy bar, I'm going to have a tantrum or a meltdown, and that's what's going to happen.
Right.
So the more you oftentimes try to appease, you know, a meltdown or a tantrum as it's happening, you're actually just setting it up worse to happen the next time you're there. Yeah. So as hard as it is to bite the bullet and to, you know, be the parent where, you know, you're not giving in and you're continuing to just ignore the negative behavior and redirect and stay calm, you are effectively teaching your child that behavior isn't going to give them any type of payoff in that situation. Yeah. And as long as we continue doing that, the behavior will disappear. And we have to make sure then the next time we come in, we plan ahead of time of, okay, if there's a meltdown, if there's a tantrum, what am I going to do about it? Let me come up with my game plan now, so that when I'm in the moment and my emotions are running high and people are looking at me, I'm not going to have to sit there and spin my wheels and then make maybe a decision that's not as good as I should be making. Yeah,
and for the long run. But Jennifer, let me, you know, and this is so unfair, but I'm going to ask you just your opinion on when you mentioned, you know, and move towards leaving the store. For me, that was always the hardest thing, is getting my child out of the store, because he didn't want to leave. There was probably something he wanted access to. Mm-hmm. And I have a friend who calls it spaghetti legs. When your child does that civil disobedience, I call it the Gandhi maneuver, when they just lay down in the aisle and their legs no longer work. They're just doing civil disobedience for you. You're thinking, I'm going to take them and I'm going to leave the store. What, as a therapist, I'm sure you've had a child at some point do spaghetti legs or the Gandhi maneuver. What are the kinds of things that you do when they do that? I'm really putting you on the spot. You can yell at me later.
Well, let me talk about two things first.
Okay.
What, before they get to the spaghetti legs.
Antecedent modification. Got it.
Antecedent modification. But I know it doesn't always work. But the antecedent modification, a lot of times what you can do to help with that transition is to plan something that's preferred immediately following that transition. Okay. So, hey, let's go to the car so that we can look at mommy's iPad. Okay. Or let's go get in the car and go home so that we could go run through the sprinklers. Okay? So that if you can have something that's very preferred and exciting, that's waiting in the wings, basically, you know, following that transition, a lot of times that will help, because you're basically, in the child's eyes, the transition is, I'm leaving everything good and I'm going to where nothing is good.
Okay, so, but we don't want to do that while they're tantruming, right? If they're tantruming, we got to wait until they've calmed down and then say.
That's ahead of time. That's before the transition occurs.
Okay.
When the tantrum starts and you get the spaghetti legs and the flailing, again, you need to remain calm, calmly give the child the instruction to stand up, and physically assist the child to stand up if necessary. And then what you want to try to do is, again, have them do as much as they can of independent walking outside the store, because you want to avoid, if you need to pick them up to remove them, then you need to. But if you can get them to move more independently, out the door, then that's what you want them to do. And all the while reinforcing, oh, that's great walking. Thank you for leaving the store. So again, I'm not addressing the spaghetti legs. I'm not addressing the civil disobedience. I'm addressing the fact that I'm prompting you to get up and leave.
Yeah.
And thank you. Now we're leaving the store. Great job.
Yeah.
Okay, so calling the attention to the positive behavior as opposed to the negative behavior.
Okay, awesome. And so in the long run, when we do the community outings, we get opportunities to work on things, and we should see a fairly steady improvement on the things that we're working on with community outings if we're doing it right. But it is going to cycle in and out of something that we need to work on new skills, right?
Yes.
Because they're going to change their expectations of an outing, and their abilities are going to change, and as they change, as they develop, there are going to be different things that they're interested in.
Absolutely. And so, just like any other type of skill that we're teaching, we want to gradually ramp up the demands and increase what our requirements are for an outing. So at first, maybe we're primarily targeting behaviors and just being able to stay with mom or dad appropriately and wait in line appropriately and leave the store when asked and not elope or run away to different parts of the store. Once we get those behaviors established, then we can move more into generalizing language skills and working on routines of, maybe how to buy a treat or how to, interact with a friend at the park. So, but you first need to establish that good foundation of skills, to get the behaviors out of the way, so that then you can start working on generalizing and acquiring new language skills and social skills and adaptive skills in those environments.
Okay, awesome. Well, this has been so helpful, Jennifer, and I so appreciate you being with us, even though I know you're not feeling at your best today.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you so much. We're going to let you get back to work, but if people have questions about outings and about some of the things that you've said, they can write in, and we can send those on to you in the coming week. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, so there's the email address on your screen, you guys. If you have questions about anything that we talked about here, make sure you write to us, and we'll forward those on to Jennifer to hear what she has to say about those. But thank you, Jennifer. Have a wonderful rest of your week. I hope you have a lovely holiday weekend.
Thanks, you too, Shannon.
And
Take care.
feel better.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
The wonderful Jennifer Yakos. I thoroughly love talking to her because she's a wealth of information. And that spaghetti legs thing, oh my gosh, how exhausting is that? But I can remember, as she says that, I remember so many times that I would be picking up my son, who was heavy for his age, and moving his legs towards the door, kind of, walking him, dragging him towards the door and going, thank you so much for walking. And him, kind of the whole way, he didn't really want to be walking, but him doing it and going, you're doing such a great job of walking with me out the store, because there was a little bit of leg movement, finding something to reinforce, changing it up, right? Oh, yeah. But if we move in that direction, we come out in a different place. It's well worth it. You got to take them on the outings. It's good for them. It's good for you. It's good for the community to see them, right? They got to be out in the community. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we've got some fun stuff to talk about, so stick with us. Hi, we're here today with Cecilia Knight, who is the Director of Training for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And today I'm thrilled to have her here because we're going to talk about manding. What is manding?
Request that you would make of another person.
Why is manding one of the first things that seems to come up in most programs?
Okay. Well, a baby requests for his mother's attention by crying or by reaching, And so it's one of the first ways that you let another person know what you need. And then that other person reinforces you by either picking you up or giving you something to drink or something to eat. And so many of our clients aren't really good at that once we start a program with them. And unfortunately, many of them engage in inappropriate manding, screaming, kicking, biting. And so what we're trying to do early on is no longer reinforce the inappropriate ways of asking and rather reinforce the appropriate ways of asking. And as we teach them an appropriate way to ask for, Mom, play with me, can I have juice, or even more simply, help, then we see those inappropriate demands decreasing and the appropriate demands increasing, because the child's wants and their desires aren't really changing, but we're teaching them the right way to get their needs met.
So manding doesn't have to actually be spoken. It can be nonverbal as well.
And that's exactly right. They could exchange an icon. And if I bring you an icon with a cup on it and hand it to you, and you bring me a juice cup, then we've made an exchange. And so there is what Skinner would call verbal behavior. You have reinforced my request for a cup or for juice.
So when we say verbal behavior, we're not talking about vocal behavior necessarily.
That's right.
It's just that it's a conversation of some sort.
What is reinforcing to the child? The demand is evoked by the child's desire or their need for something. So early on, we may arrange the situation where I know that they're interested in the juice and they're reaching for it. I may hold it back to just say juice or ja or whatever is appropriate for that child. And then as soon as they emit any sort of response, give a high level of praise and then immediately give them the juice. But what controls the demand is that specific reinforcer. So of course, if the child asks for a juice cup and you bring something else, then they're not being reinforced with what they asked to have.
Okay. What do you want?
Good job.
You say wafer, please. Wafer, please. Good talking. Thank you, Dad. Thank you, Daddy.
Welcome back to Autism Live. You know, if you were watching yesterday, we had a wonderful guest with us, Maria Dismondi, and she is an author. She used to be a teacher, and she was talking about one book in particular. I asked her to come on and talk about The Juice Box Bully. This was a book. I attended a webinar about bullying because, you know, that's a big topic for all of us, certainly a big topic for me. We've experienced a little bit of that this year, and I have a whole new outlook on it because I always thought that bullying was this thing that, you know, these terrible children that were bullying other children, and it was just very easy to see it as this very black and white with no shades of gray. Well, my son's in 3rd grade, and some kids said some things to him which clearly can be looked at as bullying on the playground. And they hurt his feelings and were making him feel miserable and hurt his self-esteem and made him very sensitive and, you know, were affecting his ability to learn. But I knew who the kids were, and it wasn't black and white because it's so hard when they're in 3rd grade. They're still so lovable and sweet. It's impossible to look and go, oh, well, you know, that child is mean and terrible, and because they're not. But they say things and do things to each other that are not kind. And it just has become this other thing for me to realize that it's going to be just as easy for my child to bully some other child, and that we need to teach all of our children. We need to teach our children, our individual children, how to behave, what is appropriate, how to take when somebody is saying something to them, and not take everything that somebody says and redefine themselves, but also how to behave towards other people and be polite, right? And then we got to take the rest of the kids in the classroom and we need to teach them the same thing. It's just as important to teach them the skills. And so somebody had recommended this book, and I got a copy of it, and then I got a second copy of it for my son's school. So, and Maria is one of the co-authors of the book. And again, it's called The Juice Box Bully. You can get it at barnesandnoble.com, and you can get it at amazon.com, and her website is www.mariadesmonde.com. And they're using this book in classrooms, and there's some handouts and a pledge for the kids to take. And it's about bullying and how a new kid comes to school, and he's working on another set of rules from his previous school about how you behave. And the kids in this new school say, that's not the way we behave. That's not how we do things. There's a bit of a twist to the story. Sorry, I have something in my eye. That's very interesting. So I think it's a really worthwhile book to get. It's a great book to share with your child, great book to share with your child's classroom. And so Maria was on the show yesterday, and she has 2 other books that are out. Her first book, which is Spaghetti on a Hot Dog Bun, about being different and what it's like to be different, and how sometimes people are going to make fun of you because you're different, but that doesn't mean you should change, and that being different's okay. And then her book, Pink Tiara Cookies for 3, which is about friends really behaving in a bullying manner to other friends, saying, if you don't do this, then this is going to happen, and I don't want you to be friends with that friend, and don't talk to this person if you're my friend. I was saying, there are adults I'd like to give this to. But in any case, it's a set. There are 3 separate books, and Maria so very generously offered, there they are, to give one of our viewers a set of these books. And we had said that we would have it up on Facebook. It is there now. I'm looking at it right now. So you need to go to our Facebook site, which is Autism Live. There it is, and see what the instructions are. It's very easy what you have to do, but I'm not going to tell you what it is because I want you to go to our Facebook page, and while you're there, please give us a like. It's a very new Facebook page, so I know it's coercive, but your reinforcement is that then you'll have the instructions, and somebody is going to win these books. We're going to give you guys a week to be able to do the instructions, and then when we're here next Tuesday, we'll announce who the winner of the book is. So you'll want to follow the instructions. But there are 3 lovely books, and we were so thrilled to have Maria Desmonde on the show with us. So there you have it. If you'd like to win these 3 books, again, it's The Juice Box Bully, Spaghetti on a Hot Dog Bun, and Pink Tiara Cookies for 3 by Maria Desmonde. And go to this site here, and you'll see the instructions are right there. I'm looking at them right now, so I know for sure that they're there. All right, we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back and finish out the show, so stick with us. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
Hi, we're here with Sue Cho, and she holds a lot of different jobs and responsibilities at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. We're going to have her help us with learning about nonverbal imitation and how we teach it to our children. But first, Sue, what do you do at CARD?
I'm a senior clinical supervisor, so I supervise children's cases. I'm also with the training department and provide training to the supervisors, people that are becoming supervisors or current supervisors. And then I also provide workshop services for children all over the world when they don't have access to a CARD site.
Great.
Nonverbal imitation is being able to copy the actions of another person.
You can do nonverbal imitation. What can you then go on to do?
Just about everything, because when people are social beings, and we learn what to do by observing other people. When we look at children learning how to play, they are copying things that are going on in their everyday lives.
So how do we go about teaching this?
So when we first teach it, you want to start off at the most concrete level, which is copying the use of an object. You can actually touch it, you can feel it, you can see it. So for example, picking up a telephone. The child has their phone, I have my phone, and I would just pick it up and say, do this, and then the child has to copy by picking up the phone and just putting it up to their ear.
And if they don't do it,
Then I would assist them. So I would first show them, do this, and then I would put it in their hand and then hold it up to their ear.
And praise them for when they do that.
And then we also want to make sure too that they're not putting the phone up to their ear when I've asked them to do something else. To start, we're just going to have the phones out, and the only thing that they can pick up is the phone. Then eventually I want to get to the point where I put other things out as well, and that they then realize that even with all these other things out, they're still able to pick up the phone when I pick up the phone. The focus of this lesson is that they observe what I do and then they copy what I did. Then we teach other items too, because we want to teach them to do multiple objects and also eventually doing multiple things with an item. So for example, let's say initially I'm teaching them to pick it up and just hold it up to their head. Maybe I also want them to understand that, oh, you dial the phone. So I might say, do this, and the child picks it up and then pretends to dial. And then eventually we start putting the actions together so they have more of a multiple sequence of activities going on so that we can teach them how to play. So for example, if I have a car, I might teach them that, okay, I'm going to start up the car. Vroom, vroom. The child imitates the sound if they have the capability of doing that. Then I'd say, okay, we're going to roll it over to the store so we both park. And then, okay, now I'm going to crash into the wall. And the child crashes into the wall so that we're able to teach multiple step sequences.
Okay. And it sounds like, again, key is getting preferred items to do this with and making it fun.
Yes, most definitely.
Not making it boring.
Yes, we want to make it interesting for the child because then they're more likely to attend and want to do it.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. We're at the end of the show, and you know, I always like to end the show when we have time with a little parent-to-parent moment, because this is a tough journey. And we started the show today and said, I don't know what's up with the universe, but a lot of people I know are having a wonky day the last couple of days. I don't know whether there's anything to this idea that it's a solar eclipse thing that was happening, but it just seems like there's a lot of strange things in the mix these last couple of days. I like to maintain a sense of humor about it all when possible. I was so frustrated last night, believe me. But then it got to the point where it's just ridiculous. It always serves to remind me that, you know, we have a plan, and sometimes the plan works out and sometimes it doesn't. But I said at the beginning of the show, so important to keep things in perspective. When we can look at things and say, whatever's kicking your can today, is it something that 5 years from now you're going to look back and be able to remember specifically what it was that was kicking your can, or just that this was a difficult time? Because it's amazing, no matter how difficult something is in the moment, when you survive it and look back on it, it's never as bad. And I think part of it is knowing that, you know, we have the perspective now to know, well, we did survive it. I think back on all the years that we were doing intensive ABA, and I gotta be honest with you guys, that there were so many times when I was in it that I didn't know that we were gonna survive it. That I would look at my husband and say, what is gonna become of us? How are we ever gonna come out of this and be okay? How? And he would say to me, I don't know, but we'll come out of it together. That's the one thing I know for sure, which was the right answer. And believe me, I know how lucky I am to have such a good guy to say that, right? But we did come out of it, and we talk about it sometimes, that we'll just sit there and go, do you believe that that's what we went through and that we're okay? Do you believe that? You know, and there's still things that come up, and we're still sorting, you know, sorting through the wreckage, right? Because financially we left a trail of wreckage. I shouldn't laugh, it's not funny, but you gotta have a sense of humor about it. But I want to say to you, if that's not where you're at, if you're in the middle of it, from somebody who was in the middle of it and didn't know that I was going to survive it, I want you to know you're going to survive this. And here's the other thing I want you to know, as strange as it may seem, you're going to come out the better for it. Maybe not in all ways. I don't think anybody comes out of it financially better, but you know what? If that was everything, if finances were everything, our lives would look different than they do, right? Isn't that the truth? And I'm not saying that that's a small thing, but you are going to be a better person for this. Your family is going to be that much stronger. Your relationships with each other are going to be that much better because you did this together. It is its own boot camp. and it's a lengthy boot camp. But I know that if you keep doing what you're doing and you're being a good parent, you're showing up for your child, your esteem about being able to stand up and say, I did this, or we did this, we showed up for this child, you're always going to be able to be proud of it. And that is no small thing whatsoever. That's really an amazing thing. You know, we named our son, his actual name is James, but we nicknamed him Jem before he was even born because we love the book and the movie, To Kill a Mockingbird. It's our favorite book. It's our favorite movie, both my husband and I. And so we wanted to name him Jem. You know, and I thought about all the qualities of the little boy in that book and what that book means to me about acceptance and seeing people for who they really are. And we came up with this idea well before, even before we were pregnant, that we wanted, if we had a boy, we wanted to name him Jem. And it was interesting to me after my son regressed into autism to watch To Kill a Mockingbird. And of course, I now look at it and see this entirely different movie through autism eyes, because it's very likely that Boo Radley in the book had autism. You know, that it seems very likely that that would have been his diagnosis, and how misunderstood he was in this neighborhood, and how kind he was, and how he protected these children. But, you know, nobody understood what he was about, and the family was ostracized. And it is an amazing thing to me. My favorite part of the book and in the movie is when the little girl talks about going on the journey with Jem and saying, we walked into the woods and this was to be our longest journey together, metaphorically speaking. And I think about that with autism all the time, that this was our longest journey together, but it was a journey so well worth it. I want to remind you that this path that you're on, it has a purpose. You're doing great work. You're showing up in a way that's really hard. I get it, but it's so worth it. This show is going to end, but our conversation continues. You can get a hold of me, and you can get a hold of us here in the studio, and get a hold of our experts in lots of different ways. Emily's going to start to show that for you on the screen. I got a little emotional there. But there are so many different ways for you to get in touch with us, whether it's via email, phone, Skype, Facebook, Twitter. We appreciate all your comments, all your concerns, even if it's just that we're a place for you to share and say, I'm afraid, or I'm despondent, or I feel hopeless today. Give me some hope, because we want to be on this journey with you. We know that it takes a lot, and it takes a lot of people, and we want to help you in any way that we can. Again, I want to remind you, if you're having difficulty starting ABA therapy, write and tell me what you think is stopping you. Is it just the finances? Is it where you're living, the location you're having difficulty finding the right service? Are you overwhelmed with checking out what insurance is available to you? Please write and tell us, because we want to help you to solve your problems that are keeping you from getting quality ABA therapy for your child. It's the gold standard of treatment. You deserve it. Your child deserves it. So let us help you to find that. Write to us. All right, tomorrow, Wednesday, Evelyn Gould at 10 o'clock. Wonderful, wonderful opportunity for us to talk about what it's like to be parents and how we can be more effective, how we can deal with our emotions so that they don't have to prevent us from helping our children. And then, of course, at 11 o'clock, Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson joins me for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. We've got some really exciting things happening tomorrow, including Joey Travolta, who is going to be here with us talking about inclusion films. It's going to be a really wonderful day. We're excited that you're going to be with us. Then we'll have a show on Thursday, and then we have a show on Tuesday, but otherwise we don't have a show for a week. So, but you can always watch us in rebroadcast and still be in touch with us. All of those wonderful things going on and more. We have a guest for you on Thursday, but I don't know who it is off the top of my head. In any case, please be a part of the conversation. We'll see you tomorrow at 9 a.m. And until then, please give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.